Story 1. I'm female 21, nearly got fired from my job recently because my entitled aunt made a scene at my workplace. I have a well-paying job in tech, and I was very lucky to even get this job, as I never went to university. I dropped out of school due to mental health issues when I was 15 years of age, so I never managed to graduate. Therefore, was unable to attend a university. Luckily, I had always had an interest in computer science and was scouted by a recruiter at my current company. I was so excited to get this job as I'd resigned myself to working minimum wage jobs, just to make ends meet for the rest of my life. All of my siblings and my parents are university educated, so no one really knew what to make of me when I dropped out. There was no real support there, though. The only person who really made an effort to understand me was my father's sister, my aunt. She herself had dropped out of school when she was younger due to pregnancy, so she understood where I was coming from. My aunt was always my hero growing up because she worked a well-paying corporate job, but she also just seemed to have endless time off. She was always jetting off on some holiday and leaving her kids with us for a few weeks. As a child, it seemed really exciting, and I was always really jealous of my cousins because she would bring them back some crazy souvenirs, foreign sweets and stuff like that. As I grew older and grew closer to my aunt, she started asking me to babysit every now and again. She always paid me like 10 euros a day for looking after her 3 children, and as a young teenager, that felt like a ton of money. I was more than happy to take care of them for her. I'm only 6 years older than her oldest son, so as I grew, he helped a lot with his younger siblings. Eventually, she starts trusting me to take care of them from longer and longer stretches. At first, it would just be for a day, on a weekend when she had to go to work suddenly. Then it moved on to overnights when she had to go away on a business trip. Eventually, though, I was her go-to babysitter for any and all childcare needs. My parents had to step in once or twice because her schedule was taking me away from school. But at that point, I was halfway out the door and having panic attacks every time I walked into my school halls. So I loved it. My aunt was the biggest champion against my parents forcing me to go to school when my mental health was only getting worse. I thought that she was the coolest person ever because she would always tell me that the school doesn't matter and that I could be anything I want to be. Eventually, with the combined weight of both of our persuasions, my parents relented and let me withdraw from school completely. I was ecstatic with the news, and I felt like I would finally have enough free time to work on my mental health, but that did not happen. Suddenly, I was practically a live-in nanny for my aunt. I was staying in her guest room for about 4 nights a week in order to take care of the children, and a lot of times it was for weeks at a time. When I was younger, I had thought that my aunt was the cool mom ever for just traveling and bringing her kids back fun things from trips abroad, and I loved that she would leave her kids with my parents because I enjoyed spending time with my parents too. However, by the time I clocked 17 years of age, spending almost every night at her house, most of the times only semi-adult in charge of 3 children, I came to the realization that my aunt was a bit of a deadbeat. When I was younger, I just guess I never understood or realized how little time she actually spent with her own children. But when I was the one putting them to bed every night and bringing them to school once the morning rose, I had a first-hand vision of how much they missed her. The little ones would constantly cry for their mother when I was putting them to bed, and she would show no interest in them whatsoever. As I grew older, I've came to realize that my aunt's help in my campaign to be allowed to leave school was probably just more for her benefits than for mine. When I was 13 or 14, I would usually only be able to babysit for her on the weekends, only to be able to take the odd day off to be able to help her out even more, spending only the evenings with them. She would always have to pay someone else to pick them up from school and take care of them until I was done for the day myself. The rate for the other babysitter was almost much higher than my 10 euros per day, so I know that she was eager to lower her expenses. I think that my aunt deliberately fed me stories about her own school days, making her truancy seem cool, and showing off her big house and expensive car. I think she wanted me to think I could achieve all these things too, if I only dropped out of school myself. I think my parents knew that, but were at a loss about how to manage me. Well, my aunt got what she wanted, and as soon as I became her 24/7 babysitter at age 15, at first the money was amazing. As a 15-year-old, it felt like I hit the jackpot. I had no school. I was getting paid to be with family. I truly felt like I had it made, that I had the best life in the world. All of my old school friends were so jealous, and my aunt would always bring me back small little trinkets from our holiday, so I felt absolutely spoiled. I never really gave much thought of my future when I was that age. I knew that I didn't want to be my aunt's babysitter for the rest of my life, though, and I knew that it would be hard to find a job. After dropping out of school, it felt like such a distant problem that I rarely even thought about it, though. I was happy enough. It all came to when I hit 18 years of age. All of my friends started going off to college, leaving me behind. I started to feel very stuck where I was. Even the friends that weren't going to university were at least getting jobs, and they were making far more than 10 euros per day at this point. I'd also grown quite delusionized with my aunt's lifestyle. I was 18, my eldest cousin was 12, and he begun to resent his mother for never being there for him. Seeing this firsthand, though, and being the one he told these worries to, I really stopped respecting her the way I did when I was younger. I didn't know how to broach the subject with her either, and I didn't know whether I wanted to do a course or something to get me back into education, or if I wanted to ask her for a raise. Eventually, I became interested in computer science. I'd always had a distant interest and usually spent my rare days tinkering away at home with my own computer. After a long conversation with my dad, I realized that I truly did have an interest in it as a subject. So, I started entering myself into coding. It was some competitions, just as a way to strengthen up my skills. Well, I managed to get to the finals in one of the most prestigious coding competitions in the country, and while I did not win, I managed to catch the attention of a company that was looking for interns. I was scouted at age 19, and I took part in a part-time paid internship for 2 years. Well, seeing as it was part-time, my aunt didn't have much of an issue. She grumbled a little that she would have to find someone to pick the kids up from school, but I was still the one who gave them their dinner and put them to bed and stuff. We pretty much just went back to the way it's been when I was still in school. I would wake up early to get the kids up and dressed, and I would give them their breakfast and walk them all to school. The other babysitter would pick them up from school and keep them until I could come and get them, and I would take care of them for the rest of the night. My aunt reduced my pay down to 5 euros a day, though, and she told me that since I was only taking care of them for half a day, I should only get half of my usual rate. I didn't bother bringing up the fact that my rate should have doubled when I left school. She isn't an easy woman to speak to by any stretch, and our relationship had become rather stained. I'd started voicing the opinion that she should spend more time at home with her own children, and she did not like that at all. Things continued on it that way for the next 2 years. Even though our relationship was strained, I was too scared to tell her that I wanted to quit. She isn't the most approachable person on good days, and more often than not, she would be too cold to me. I think she was angry that the person she groomed to be her cheap nanny was outgrowing her. Well, once the 2 years of my internship were over, I was offered a position at the company full-time, of course. I was over the moon excited, and my parents were too. The salary being offered was far more than an entry-level position warranted, and I don't think anybody quite believed what happened. I'd somehow pulled myself out of the stigma of being a high school droppy, and was now being offered a salary much larger than any of my university-educated siblings combined. So, everyone was pretty happy, except for my aunt. She didn't bother coming to the celebration dinner that my parents hosted. When I did get a chance to talk to her, all she said was that she was supposed that I was going to cut down my hours even more now. I was confused and didn't know what she was getting on about until I realized that she still expected me to be her babysitter. This woman expected me to come home from a full-time job, walk to her house, take care of her 3 children for €2.50 a day, while she travels the globe living it up. She actually had the audacity to look surprised when I told her that I wasn't going to be able to continue as her babysitter. Now that I had a full-time job to worry about, she acted like I blindsided her with the news, like I slapped her in the face with a pile of salami. It was genuinely ridiculous. I had assumed that she had known I wouldn't be able to work for her forever. I'd felt like it was just a natural progression for me. Honestly, I felt like it was obvious. If I had to cut my hours down for part-time internship, obviously I wouldn't be able to continue with a full-time job. She had a bit of a strop when she realized that she would not be able to make my mind change anymore. She did try, of course, and at first she tried convincing me that tech was a terrible avenue to go down, and there's no future in it. Well, I knew that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, so I just rolled my eyes when she said this and told her that I would have to see for myself. After that, she tried to guilt me out of accepting the position. That's right. Guilt me out of accepting the position to better myself in life, my own family member. According to her, the kids saw me as a second parent and I was basically the stand-in for their father that they didn't have. According to my aunt, it would be unfair and I'd be letting my cousins down if I just, quote, abandoned them and left them in care of some strange babysitter who didn't even know them. Well, I was tempted, I will admit, to tell my aunt exactly what I thought of her right then and there. I'm 21 now, and since I was 15 years old, I've been hearing her children cry for her less and less. They barely know her at all, and while it's true, yes, that they would have a hard time adjusting to life without me, they're getting older, and I couldn't wait until the youngest was 18 to really start my career. I was the one who acted as a shoulder to cry on when my cousins would wonder why their mommy didn't want to spend time with them. She thought that she could emotionally blackmail me into continuing to raise her children for her, and I really did want to throw it back in her face. But I didn't. I don't want to burn any bridges, and I don't want to be that kind of person who says hurtful things in anger, so I just apologized to my aunt for the inconvenience. Well, this was a while ago, and for the past few months I've been working pretty happily. The work's hard, and the entire IT department of the company is relying on me, which means the rest of the company is too. I'll tell you guys right now, it's a lot of pressure. But I really feel needed and dependable, and I'm honestly enjoying it. The other day, though, I was called to my boss's office. My boss, I mean, the CEO of the company. I'd only met him once or twice, so I was nervous when he called me into his office. There's been a lot of layoffs in tech recently, and though I doubted that I'd actually be fired, I was still nervous. I do a lot for the company, and I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, so they'd really be in trouble without me, but I was still pretty much freaking out. I got into his office and sat down at the front of his desk, my palms sweaty and my breathing fast. After the awkward small talk, he got down to business and told me why exactly he called me up to the top floor. Apparently, my aunt had paid him a visit. Yeah, Yeah, I know. I'm in shock too. I thought he was joking or something when he first told me because I thought the idea was actually ludicrous, but no, I was wrong. My poor boss was in a really difficult position, and I really feel for him. No one wants to get into the middle of family drama, and my aunt had picked him and put him right down in the square middle. So, according to my boss, this is how it went. My aunt, using the fact our companies do business together, lied her way into the building, somehow convincing my boss's assistant that she had made an appointment with him. The poor assistant, thinking she was going to be fired for making such a big mistake, let my aunt in. My boss, who had not been expecting her, recognized her from previous meetings and thought that my aunt must have something important to tell him. He had her sit down. He had his assistant bring her a cup of coffee. And just when he thought that my aunt was going to tell him there was a problem with the company, she starts talking about me. Now, my boss hadn't even known that we were related, and he also runs a huge company and doesn't remember every single employee. And I'm new. He didn't say this part, but I could tell. It must have taken him a minute to realize who the heck my aunt was even talking about. And by then, she'd gotten down to business. My aunt, a member of my family, told my boss that I've been bad-mouthing his company in my free time. According to her, I'd been telling anyone who would listen about my salary, saying it's too low, that the hours were too long, that I barely got any time off. According to her, I was overworked and absolutely exhausted. From the way my boss said it, my aunt said all this while pretending to be concerned about me. I could tell that she'd gone in there with the intent of getting me fired, but she had told my boss that she was just concerned about me, and he actually believed her. She told this man that he needed to give me more time off because I was in danger of, quote, the burnout. She told him that I was considering going to the papers. This shows her age. Honestly, because someone in that supposed position these days would never go to the papers. I feel so bad for this man, honestly. He was sitting there, trying to explain to me in the kindest possible way that he was going to have to fire me for damaging the reputation of the company in my free time. He thought that I was some uppity, entitled brat. So he was trying to say it in a way that didn't leave him or his company liable for a lawsuit. Guys, I had to interrupt him at that point and tell him that my aunt's lying to you. He stopped mid-sentence, and I can't impress on you how bad I was feeling for this man. He's in his 50s, running a gigantic company, and here he was being dragged into a non-existent family drama. He was quiet while I explained to him the situation, and I thought he didn't believe me, so I was going to show him a bit of proof. Text messages between my aunt and me to prove that I was telling the exact truth. He said that's not necessary. He let me get back to work then, and it looked like he was fighting off the world's biggest migraine. I'm home from work now, as he called me to his office at around 11. I went back to work, and it's 6 p.m. now. I'm just sitting here, absolutely flabbergasted. I feel like I've been in a haze all day, barely hearing what people are saying to me. I'm just angry. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do here. Do I call my aunt and ask her what the heck she was thinking? She'd probably just double down on her lies and tell me that she's just been concerned for my mental health and that she's worried I was working too much. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. This story is a wild one. A gigantic family war mixed with business. I have 4 updates to get through. Guys, go grab your favorite beverage, sit down, and strap your seatbelts on. This one's a bumpy ride. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button because I post stories every single day, and it's not something you're going to want to miss. Update number 1. A lot of you will be mad about this, but I didn't confront my aunt. It's been a week now since she tried to get me fired, and I've had no communication with her since. I honestly just don't see the point. It's not like she's going to be apologetic if I bring it up, so why would I? she would just play the victim or lie and say she has good intentions, which we all know is not true. It doesn't seem like her meddling has done any damage to my career, yet, at least. I haven't seen my boss since I left his office, and I reckon that if he was going to fire me, he would have done so. A lot of people have been defending my aunt, which is crazy. And a lot of you seem to think that I'm reading into her intentions in some negative way. I promise you, I am not. I know for a fact that my aunt's concern for my well-being is completely, utterly fake. I didn't realize it when I was 15, and she was helping me campaign for my parents to let me leave school. But I can see it now. She's doing the exact same thing now as she did back then, pretending that she's worried about my mental health and trying to make me stay at home to recover. Really, all she wants is her cheap labor back. And she's going to have a bad shock when she realizes that's not going to happen. Even if I did lose my job, there's absolutely no way I would ever go back to her. No chance in heck. I can't really explain through a post what this woman's actually like, but if you met her or you know her, you would know what everything I'm saying is true. There's no way I'm misreading the circumstances. Update number 2. You guys will never believe what happened. I'll give you some background first, as I feel this reveal deserves an intro. So, it's been 3 weeks since update 1 and my aunt tried to get me fired. Everything was pretty normal. I'd relaxed a lot and was sure that if I was going to get fired, I would have already done so. I was plugging along doing my job as normal when one day I get a phone call from Aunt. I hadn't heard from her in a while, so when I first saw her name on the caller ID, butterflies, nervous. I was prepared for the passive-aggressive questions about work. My dad hasn't been speaking to her either since I told him what she's done, so she doesn't know that her little scheme didn't work. I was ready for her to be all fake and nice because she assumed that I've been fired, and she was happy that her plan worked. Well, oh boy, I was wrong. As soon as I answered the call, it was like a bomb had gone off in my hand. My phone nearly shook with the way she was screaming, my ears almost bleeding. I couldn't understand a word she was even saying. I'd asked her about 5 times to calm down and take deep breaths, but every time I did, she'd even get more upset. I don't mean that she was just yelling. I mean she was bellowing, screaming, but also sobbing down the phone, and her words were just completely drowned out. After a few minutes, I managed to get the gist of what it was she was trying to say to me. She lost her job. This was all I could make out, and honestly, I was wondering why she was calling me about it when she hung up the phone. I don't think my reaction was up to her standards because I heard my dad's phone ring in the next room just a few seconds later, and once he answered, I could hear the hysterics starting up again over his phone from sitting across the room. Dad has more experience with his sister's hysterics than I do, so he was able to get the whole story. Once he hung up the phone, he came to my room and he was laughing hysterically. Guys, I was still so confused at this point. I wanted to know what was going on, but on the other hand, I wanted nothing to do with my aunt anymore. I had no interest in what was going on in her life. This was until my father told me what had actually happened, and I started laughing. So, as it turns out, the reason my boss recognized my aunt so quickly was that his brother works there. And as it turned out, he is my aunt's boss's boss. So my boss, confused about why my aunt was trying to pull, and not sure if I was lying to him to save my job, contacted his brother. Well, he wanted to know about my aunt's personality. So, my bro's brother asked his employee, my aunt's supervisor, what she was like. How was her work ethic and stuff like that? Well, as you'll have it, my aunt has been not getting along with her boss. Apparently, my aunt's been taking a lot of time off of work ever since she was prompted a few years ago, and no one's even noticed. Once an internal review was done on her and my aunt's boss realized that she was getting paid for days that she didn't even work, he was just looking for an excuse to file a complaint about her to his boss, my boss's brother. Well, the complaint was filed and my boss's brother looked over at my aunt's salary and the sick days that she's been taking, and he found out that my aunt had been paid double what she should have been paid for 8 years now. And because the company expanded very rapidly, no one even bothered to check. So, she had been getting double her full-time salary, but was also taking weeks off at a time, using illness as an excuse. To add some insult to injury, it was discovered that the sick notes that she's been bringing in were forged. So first and foremost, my aunt lost her job. That's it, she's unemployed, point blank, period. But on top of that, the company's going to sue her for lost revenue, unless she agrees to pay back all the extra money she's received over the last 8 years, of course, and she's being brought to court by her GP for fraud. It probably makes me a terrible person, honestly, but as soon as I heard this, I started laughing just like father. It feels like karma has won for once, honestly. She's such a conniving little person, and she's finally got what's coming to her. Thank goodness. Update number 3, just a quick one. Just popping on to tell you guys that I spoke to my boss in passing. He's apologized for believing my aunt in the first place. To be honest, I think all this might have been a good thing, because now the CEO of the company not only knows my name, but also feels like he owes me something. Whereas my aunt blames me for her getting fired. She seems to think that I actively campaigned against her. She's taking no responsibility for the fact that she's the one who tried to get me sacked. And she doesn't believe me when I tell her that I didn't do a thing. I can't even call what I feel shocked anymore. It's just kind of a disappointment. My aunt was a hero to me when I was growing up, and now I see her as who she really is. Just a mess of a woman. I feel bad for my cousins, and that's it. Last I heard, her GP is trying to bring her to court for forging sick notes with his name. And with those expenses on top of what she owes her old company, I doubt she'll be able to keep her head above water for very long. It's not like I wanted this to happen. I didn't go into this with the hopes that she's going to lose her job and end up getting sued. I haven't taken an active step in this entire situation. I've been completely neutral. I don't know how she's figured that I'm to blame for all this, but honestly, I think that she's just using me as a scapegoat, so that she doesn't have to admit that she's done all this to herself. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I told you that was a crazy story. I actually managed to find a year update. It was in the comment section. I had to scroll a bit. But here it is, just a short year update, final update of the story. Hello, everyone. It's been about a year since I've last updated, and I just wanted to throw this down for you. First things first, my cousins are alright. I don't know how, but somehow managed to get into contact with their father, who no one's even heard from in years, and we found out the truth. My aunt had lied to her ex and told them that she had moved the kids to the United States, and so all his attempts at contacting them were lost. I have no idea how they managed to find him, but the kids are in his custody now, and they seem much happier than they ever have been since the last time I posted, at least. My aunt, she's drowning in debt. The court is ordering her to pay back over 100,000 euros to the company, and she doesn't even have that. She'd put all her money into investments over the years, and every single one of them went bust. On top of that, she has legal fees, and the case with the GP hasn't even gone to court yet. A part of me feels bad for my aunt. She had everything going for her. She was living an amazing life, and she would have been able to continue to do so if she hadn't tried to make trouble with my boss and threatened me with going to the papers. She shot herself in the foot with her own ammo. The funny thing is, She did the entire thing in order to keep cheap labor as a babysitter, when the amount she was making, she could have easily afforded a regular nanny. Instead, she invested all her money into cryptocurrency, and well, she's lost her house, her car, her job, and her kids. As for myself, I'm doing quite well. Still just plugging away at work, and I've talked to my cousins a few times. They seem pretty happy. I haven't seen them in a few months, as their dad lives in a different city, but from what I hear, they're doing pretty swell. A quick thanks to everybody who gave me advice throughout this entire time, and looked out for me. I hope you all get to watch the people who wronged you get slayed by the karma, just like I have. Thank you.
Story 2.
To start, I'm 46, female, married, and have 3 kids. 10 years ago, we came into money, a lot of money. I worked hard in my specific field, which earns a lot. I've done some smart investments, and they've paid off. I've been steadily adding to my bank account for these years. My husband considers this my money. We don't have a prenup, hence I will take it as it's mine. When the first payload came in, I did what my husband and I always discussed if we would have the money. Mortgage paid off. I bought a new car, and I managed to buy a nice house in our favorite holiday destination. We rent this one to a very nice family for most of the year. We set up college funds for our children, each an equal amount, which should be enough to pay for 5 years. If there's any money left from the fund, the children can use this as a down payment on their own house or apartment. When the money kept coming in, thanks to my investments and my work, I looked towards what could be done for my immediate family. My husband has 2 sisters. We have 5 nieces and nephews on his side from one of the sisters. My brother has 2 children as well. It was decided that all of the nieces and nephews would have college funds as well, for the same amount as my children under the same strict stipulations. I would get the information about the cost and make sure everything's paid. My eldest niece had already started college, so I paid the amount already paid to her parents to keep everything fair. She managed to finish within the 4 years and has some money left. I had an accountant, which is my dear friend, find out what would be beneficial to my brother and one of the sister-in-laws regarding to their mortgage. I paid off the majority of both of them. My parents were then sent on a very nice trip, since their house is already paid off, and for both my in-laws and other sister-in-law, I paid their rent, so I paid a certain amount so they can save that money. Part of the money goes to charity at home and abroad. I also set up some college funds for the children of our closest friends and family members. As a treat, hubby, little one, and I went on a paid-by-us/me vacation with both my extended family and his. Now, at this point, everyone's grateful. However, one of the sister-in-laws always has a need to be in the spotlight, or that one of all of her children need to be. She's nice to my face, but I know for a fact that she's been bad-mouthing me, makes passive-aggressive remarks about me and my work and my person, but always in such a manner that would be like an a-hole way, if you would say something. My usual tactic, and the one that works, is always to play innocent and dumb, and nitpick on what she says. I've managed to shut her up many times without being classified as a jerk. So the past few years, sister-in-law had been hinting that I should pay for a very nice all-inclusive resort holiday for her and her family abroad. You know, since I have the money. Side note, they have money saved that would initially been used for college funds of their children. Money that has barely been used. Well, COVID hit, and she has been silent. She and her husband took and still take it very seriously, though. Now that the restrictions are mostly lifted, and she had a birthday party for her and her son, since her son really wanted the party. No biggie, we show up with a gift for her and her son, and all is well. Birthday boy got a voucher to buy a tent, or the camping gear he always wanted. Sister-in-law got a voucher to use whatever way she wanted. I added some sunscreen, drinks, and such, as I knew she wanted to go on a holiday of some sorts. Or so we thought. She asked what our holiday plans are. We say that we won't be crossing any foreign borders, stay in home country, but we booked a cabin somewhere for a week. Very nice, not luxurious or anything. We would still need to cook and do the grocery shopping. Sister-in-law starts the, "Oh, how nice. We're still thinking about what we want to do." My lovely hubby and I are both having an inkling what she's hinting at, but we start spouting ideas in the hopes of avoiding tragedy. We have family at one place. Maybe they could stay there for a weekend or so. There's a campsite somewhere else with entertainment for children of various ages. Then it comes. She shows us something she found on the World Wide Web, and to be honest, it looks amazing. Not too luxurious, but still very nice. All-inclusive water park for the kids, spa center, the whole shebang. Price tag for a family of 7? $35,000. So hubby says that's a lot, but is glad they saved so much to do this. Sister-in-law then goes, "Oh, we don't. We thought you would be paying as my birthday gift." Say what? People, she just told us what she was looking at. No, scratch that. She expected me to give about $35,000 as a gift for her birthday just because I have the money? She goes on that I earn enough and their family, our godson, other nieces and nephews have been promised already and so forth. We all sat stunned in silence. Birthday boy and two of his sisters even looked up to see what we would say while playing with our little ones. Hubby just started laughing, thinking it was a joke. Father-in-law just sat there and looked on, and I did a seemingly very good impression of a fish. No, sister-in-law was dead serious. You have the money, you can just give it, you won't miss it." This woman has shown her disdain for me and my work many times in a very sweet passive-aggressive tone, so that it's hard to call her out on it. Me, hubby, and even her father still have done so. I just sat there and listened how she widened her eyes, trying to look sweet. Something she does every time she wanted something, and give all the reasons why we should give the money without actually counting the voucher we gave her. I then regain my wits and just say the full sentence she did not want to hear. "No." Then the conversation when it's followed, "But you have the money." Yeah, I have money, that's true." "So you can pay for it." "I could indeed." "Oh, that's great." But I won't." But, we deserve it. You won't miss it. We're family." Yeah, we're indeed family. Fact, we all deserve a nice holiday after all the fluff show called COVID. False. I would surely miss it since it won't be in the bank account. Sister-in-law and brother-in-law continue to rant about how much they think I should pay for it. Listen. You've shown many times you don't not respect me or my line of work. You do not respect the fact that I worked very hard, made sacrifices to earn this money. You do not respect the fact that I've paid off your mortgage, paid for the college education of your children, and even some money for their own place. You badmouth me, call me names, and even told people hubby should divorce me. Sister-in-law's trying to deny it. Brother-in-law calls me a liar. Father-in-law joins in and sides with me. Her own children tell their father that they've heard their own mother say horrible things about me. Birthday boy even recorded one conversation she had with someone while she was making a TikTok video. He showed this, and brother-in-law went mute. Conversation continues with sister-in-law. "Fine, then don't pay for this holiday. The least you can do is pay for our plane tickets and let us stay at your holiday home, favorite little holiday destination." Remember, I rented out to a local family for most of the year due to COVID. They have to stay there as they can't and aren't going to travel. I say it's not happening. First of all, the family can't leave. Second, you don't get to make demands. The voucher you got has a very generous amount of money on it for you to use whatever way you please. Maybe towards a holiday. Third, we already went on a paid by us/me holiday, so you got a paid for holiday already. And fourth, if you want more money, then get a job that will pay more. You have a degree. Last, you treat me like crap and still expect me to just hand over my hard-earned money? Sister-in-law starts the waterworks and turns to her father, who completely sided with me. He told her he understood me. He told her he knew how hard I worked and the sacrifices me and husband made for this. Hubby is pissed. He sees red and tells his sister in no uncertain terms that this won't be happening and how dare they. He tells her that we're leaving, we pack up the kids and we go. Later, we get a call. Mother-in-law has FM tendencies, as their sister-in-law's her favorite. She tried the whole spiel on how hard they had it before I came into money and helped them, etc. Hubby dealt with her perfectly, and she understood after a lengthy conversation. Now, here's where I just laugh. Apparently, sister-in-law's kids are mad that she pulled this stunt and went full rebel mode. We have a great relationship and seemed afraid that this would influence it. They managed to come by and we had a heart-to-heart. I told them we didn't blame them for the actions of their parents. I explained to them the reasons for not handing out money like that after the initial gifts. The youngest seemed to side more with mom and dad, but the rest said they understand. They know about their generous college and home funds. I stated to them that we would not want for them to do anything against their parents as they still live there. They stayed for dinner and then went home. As of now, the kids are barely talking to their parents. They still do their chores, let them know things, but that's it. FM, in the form of other family members, came in as sister-in-law had sent the messages and called them. A simple Facebook post by Birthday Boy, with the video put a stop to that. Sister-in-law and brother-in-law had an enormous backlash by the FM, calling them out. They've been uninvited to certain events. We've received apologies from the FM. Some told me they had a hard time as they understood both her and me. The only thing that bothers me is the fact that my PIL are caught in the middle, especially my mother-in-law, who's very family-oriented. I know some of you might or will wonder why I just won't give them the money. Well, one of the reasons why is the way that she's treated me. Even before I came into money, another reason is that I simply feel uncomfortable just handing out money. I simply ask you to give your opinion in a kind fashion. Am I the a-hole for not paying? What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. So this story has multiple parts. We're going to hop into part 2 now. The title is, You Paid for Them, You Pay for Us. I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't done so, just so you don't miss any future updates on this story, because let me tell you right now, the sister-in-law's not done demanding. Let's see what's going on. Hey guys, I was the one whose sister-in-law demanded that I pay for a holiday. Here's part 2. So sister-in-law was very disappointed and angry that I did not bow down to her every whim, and paid for the holiday. For those who read my first post know that I'm well off, thanks to hard work and, well, some luck. We had some FMs, flying monkeys, come in because of my sister-in-law. Most backed down and underrated where we stood and left us alone. Unfortunately, the whole family of my dear husband now knows that we have a bank account with money on it. My sister-in-law had called a lot of family members to complain and spill the beans. They began talking amongst themselves and their children. Some of the aunts, uncles, and cousins did not think it fair that I paid for some college funds for some children, or that I paid for a family holiday. To note, I only have college funds for the children of cousins who we have a close relationship with. That's about 6 cousins with around 12 kids. I'm in this family for almost 20 years, and I only see the majority of the aunts and uncles and cousins on the yearly, bi-yearly family reunion, if everybody comes. I haven't seen one of them in around 5 to 10 years. A couple of days after the fallout with sister-in-law, an aunt and uncle call, something they never do. I put my phone on speaker as I was busy with folding the laundry. They ask how everything's going, how we're holding up during the COVID and such. We exchange some experiences, and then they both go like this. This is the start of the convo. Uncle and aunt. They say, Listen, we hear you have some college funds set up for some of the children of certain cousins. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. Alright, is it true that you took mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law 1 and 2, and family with you on holiday? Yeah. Oh, you also have a holiday home, yes? We do, but why do you want or need to know this? We never knew you had so much money." "Well, a lot of hard work, sacrifices, dedication, and luck were part of it." "Aha! Well, you have to pay for our grandchildren's college fund as well. And when we want to go on a holiday with our children too, we deserve it."
"We're family, so you have to. You have to pay me." "Yes, we want college funds for your 6 grandchildren, each consisting of $800,000 for each child."
"We want a holiday home like yours, but in a different location."
"We already have one we want picked out. We'll send you the information, and that also goes for our family holiday. We're family, and since you have the money, you can pay for us too."
I'm just sitting there, pissed off in silence.
They continue to rant that they deserve it because they're family, and family takes care of each other. My hubby, meanwhile, had heard everything and was getting angrier. I pressed a record button halfway through the convo and asked them to repeat their demands. I eventually asked them if they had more to say, which they hadn't. I just flat out said that it wasn't going to happen, that they might think they're entitled to my money, but they weren't. I quoted the phrase they and many of my family gave us when hubby and I didn't have the money and were in a tight spot because we had a health scare. We asked every family member if we could borrow some money and we could pay it back.
Only 3 of the 9 aunts and uncles helped us, and we paid them back.
The quote, "It's your responsibility to have and earn enough money for the care, well-being, and education of your family. If you can't, then you don't deserve them. We won't be giving any money." Stunned silence on their side, I told them to relay the message to the rest and not call us with such demands. And I hung up the phone. Hubby was proud of me. In the weeks that followed, the same other aunts, uncles, and cousins called with the same, only those aunts and uncles who helped us in our time of need called and told us to say that it's our money and they've seen plenty of it and don't ask for more. One cousin called and asked for a certified loan for a down payment on a house, something I agreed to. They had the majority saved but came short of $1,000. They had to pay for it sooner as they could get the house sooner. Just now I saw that I received the first half of it. That also raised hell. Then with the aunts, uncles, and cousins, we had a Zoom call, and I explained to them my reasons for not doing this. I told them that they could always come when they truly needed financial help, but under legal contract so that neither party would feel themselves screwed over. Cousin, who borrowed money, even showed the certified notarized loan. Most seemed to understand, not entirely happy, but they knew they could come for help, but for some it wasn't enough. Then came the cherry on the top. I came home last week on a weekday to find a lot of parked cars in an otherwise almost empty street. I had to pass my house in order to park somewhere else, and around 15 to 20 of aunts, uncles, and cousins had gathered in the front yard. So much for social distancing. Afterwards, it were 3 aunts, 3 uncles, and some cousins and their spouses. I parked the car and walked back home. Now, here's something that a few people know. I have security cameras around my home and record sound as well. Another thing that a few people know, don't mess with me. I'm told that my right hook is very painful, so while walking back, I called the non-emergency line of our local police station. I told them of the situation and telling them that crap might hit the fan. If they could come and assist in case it got out of hand, that would be great. They would send some cops and, well, crap did hit the fan. The moment I stepped inside of people, they started screaming, cursing, telling me to pay up or they'll make sure that I'll pay one way or the other, all the while cornering me. Some of them poked their fingers close to my face and in my chest and arm. I told them multiple times to stop what they were doing and leave. Sometime through this, more cops were called by some neighbors as well, and when they arrived, were trying to get to me. The one uncle made a mistake. He slapped me. A man about 6 foot slapped me, a woman of just 5'2" across the face in full view of the police. Ha! The crowd went silent as he put his face almost in my face and went on a rant that I had to obey him as one of the elders of the family, all while still having his hand raised as he would slap me again.
He couldn't continue his rant. I knocked him to the ground. He stayed down. Not unconscious, but quite rattled and stunned that I punched him. This was apparently what the cops needed as well. The family members were stunned at the cops, who managed for them to get away from me. They were pissed. A couple of aunts, uncles, and cousins managed to make a run to their car and drive away. The rest got met with some very angry cops, some fines for breaking social distancing rules, and the expectation that charges might be pressed against them. So, to shorten the novel already, I'm fine. Had some bruised fingers, uncle had a broken cheekbone of my lovely cameras are now in the hands of the DA. The other family members have distanced themselves from the crap that's happened. To be honest, I feel really crappy. I feel like dividing a family because I don't hand out my money. Hubby says that this is money that I worked hard for, so I get to decide what happens. Still, I'm thinking of setting some college funds aside for the rest of the children. Though, I'm doubting that. It would also seem that I don't stand my ground and can be persuaded with violence. Threats and harassment, I'm so sick of it. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito, and I'm telling you, this story just gets more crazy every sentence. I'm about to read to you now part 3. I hope you're enjoying. If you are, smash that subscribe button and consider dropping a like on the video. I present you part 3. Hey guys, I find it hard to answer all. I still wanted to thank you for the comments and opinions. I'll try to cover everything. I know some people think that this is fake. That's okay, I wish it was. What I want to start with is that this behavior is out of character. This is my hubby's family, and they have always been hardworking themselves. Saved money and family-oriented. They did/do not all have jobs that have earned a lot. Them not loaning money when we needed is because they didn't like loaning money. They were afraid not getting it back, as they also needed it. However, the comment that made them hurt. We talked about it at the time, they understood it, and then apologized. Also, hubby and I have strong feelings that blabbermouth sister-in-law has said some things to them for them to go nuts. At the moment, this is just a hunch. We'll see when the time tells us. So for them to pounce on me like this is not normal behavior for them. That doesn't change a thing, though. Since the incident, I've talked to cousins, aunts, and uncles. On advice of my lawyer, I sent an email that I do not want to be contacted by them at this point, as the visitors might face a lawsuit, as does little love tap uncle. I gave them contact information of lawyer if they wish to see or need to speak. I asked them to respect this. I also advised the visitors of little love tap uncle to find a legal advice due to the circumstances. As of now, they respect this, as we have not received calls, texts, and emails. Only one cousin's in contact with hubby. This is the cousin who has the certified loan, and thus we need to be in contact with each other. He told hubby that the visitors and little love tap uncle are very ashamed of themselves, and realize they fluffed up enormously. He's heard some talk about the mediation. Little love tap uncle even cried in front of him, a man who never cries. It seems genuine, but I am cautious. I've read the responses, and I just don't feel guilty anymore. I'm a person who helps when needed, always have. Even when we did not have a lot of money, people were always welcoming to stay for dinner and a night or two to get back on their feet. I've always felt lucky and blessed that I have a roof over my head, 3 square meals a day, and clothes on my back. Hubby and I discussed that we won't be offering any kind of funds for the family members, their grandchildren or children. However, we are open to certified loans like cousin has, but have decided that we won't be sharing this view for now. I'm not going to punish people for the actions of their parents and grandparents. Some people said that I should move and change my number. No, I won't do that. I'm not going to move because of what happened. We live in a safe neighborhood with neighbors who take care of each other. Also, as of now, this is an isolated incident. I did block them on my phone and social media. My number is known to many official authorities, and again, as this is an isolated incident for the time being, I won't. Hubby chose not to block them, and any contact to them has been through him. In case they want to message him and they say things that could be used in court, he wants to keep tabs on them for as far as that is possible. I'm okay with this. All the correspondence have been saved. Lawyer and I have a Zoom call planned for next week. I've let him know what cousin said. He also hopes to have heard something from the DA then. He said that mediation is an option and would not be surprised if the DA would look into this, and if the visitors and little love-tap uncle are open for this idea. There might still be legal consequences for them. He has some ideas, but it also depends on the DA and what the visitors and LLTU, little love-tap uncle, pleaded. Lawyer did tell me, though, that he had some time to read some of the statements and view parts of the footage. Up until now, their stories are consistent with the footage he's seen. At this point, I want their actions recorded somewhere and have consequences for them. You do not get to threaten me, possibly threaten my family, and harm me without getting your behind kicked at least once. Let them be scared crapless at this point. I could care less because you know what? I'm done. The footage is in the hands of the DA and my lawyer. Also, a neighbor has also recorded what happened, and that's also in the hands of the DA and my lawyer. Neighbor also gave a statement. I've seen the footage saved in other places. You never know, so I saved it literally everywhere I could think to store it. Neighbors know what happened. I sent them flowers and an apology for the disturbance. They do appreciate the gesture. Neighbors are not afraid, thankfully, and have promised to keep an eye on things. I'm telling you guys, my neighbors are really angels. I don't consider myself a hero. I just try to be a decent human being. I don't flaunt the fact we have more money. We live in a normal home, in a normal street. We don't wear expensive clothing or heck, even name brands hardly. The car I bought 10 years ago was brand new then, and the baby's still purring strong. It has some dents and scratches on it, but hey, the baby works. I'm not going to buy a new car if this one's still working perfectly fine just because the paint has a little bit of scratches on it. Simple wear and tear. Same goes for my husband's car. Kids have their own chores and get pocket money, but if they want something extra, they can do extra chores for some extra spending money. They also have to save part of their pocket money. We just want to teach them the value of money. The oldest children already realize that we have filled a bank account, but has also seen what it's cost. The kids want a Switch, which is a gaming system at the moment, so they're saving as much money as they can so they can get that for now. And we'll pay for a certain amount and the rest they have to get themselves. So, we just try to be an average family. I hope I've covered all the comments and questions. If I update again, you will be the first to hear about it. Thanks again for listening. Story 3. I'm 34 and female. I'm the only child from my mother's first marriage with my father. My mother and father had a really messy divorce when I was 4, and my mother remarried my stepfather very soon after. I haven't heard from my father since I was 10 years of age, and I've made no effort to contact him since. I have one brother who resulted from my mother's second marriage to my stepfather. He's 25 and we aren't very close. My mother passed away 10 years ago to breast cancer. It was really hard on my brother as he was only 15 when this happened. My stepfather suffered a lot afterwards too, and I also had to become the breadwinner for the family for 3 months before he was able to pull himself together and go back to work. I'm very close with my stepfather and I love him a lot, but he's always drawn a line between us. He loves me too and is very vocal about it, very affectionate, but he's always made sure that I know that he is not my father. This hurt a lot when I was younger, but I've moved past it now as an adult. When my mother died, she had about $50,000 in savings. That was split between my brother and me. He was only 15, so the money was put away so that he could access it when he was 18. But I used mine to pay off my student loans right away. Once my brother turned 18, he pretty much wasted all his money away before he even went to college. So now he's in considerable amount of debt, and I'm debt-free and have a good job. A week ago, I received a call from a lawyer. My biological father died, and as I was with his only child, his assets would be given all to me. Guys,
He had over $1 million in assets, all of which were sold upon his request after he died. I now know that I'm really, really rich, with no idea what to do with all of it. I'm in a lot of emotional turmoil at the moment, just because I hadn't even known my father was sick and his death came very suddenly. I have to mourn him without really having to know him, and now I have all this death money, and I feel like I should have done something noble with it, like donate it to breast cancer charity for Mom. But I also want to just live my best life. I have no debts to pay, and I'm good with money. I could invest this and make it last my entire life. When I first got the news, I did what anyone would do when they suddenly have millions of dollars. I went on the biggest night out with my friends I could think of. I flew us all out to Vegas, and we went crazy for a few days. Now, I'm back home and I haven't even spent a chunk of my inheritance. If all that isn't enough, as well as the money, my dad wrote me a letter that would be delivered in the event of his death. I just got it in the mail yesterday, and he revealed some things about my mom that I had no idea about. Mom always spun the divorce idea between her and Dad as some sort of mutual separation, and made it all seem very calm. But she always told me that it was my father who decided that he did not want to see me anymore. I would see him sporadically throughout my childhood. He'd show up every second birthday and sit in a corner moodily. Then he would give me a big expensive present while glaring at my mother and stepdad. I never paid much attention to him as a kid. He was just a guy who brought gifts, and when I was a teenager, I started to struggle with abandonment issues. As any teen girl would without a father, right? My mom sat me down and told me that it's not my fault, that my father was just not a good man, and that I was better off without him anyways. Well, I believed all this up until now when I got my dad's letter. Apparently, he had not wanted the divorce at all. It was less than mutual. According to my dad, he was head over heels in love with Mother, willing to do anything for her. He agreed to be a stay-at-home father so that she could work when she began struggling with postpartum depression. Once my mom went back to work, she met my stepfather. Apparently, he was her manager at the company she worked at, and they hit it off right away. In the letter my dad sent, he said that my mom began to have an affair with my stepfather behind his back when I was 2 years old. So, he would be at home, taking care of me and tending the house, while she would be having, quote, business meetings with her boss in a motel every weekend. Eventually, my dad found out and told my mom that she had to stop her affair or he'd leave her. He says that he was hoping that she'd come to her senses and break things off with my stepdad, but she did not. She left my dad in a heartbeat and married my stepfather the next year. My dad said that he tried to get custody of me, but the courts have a bias towards mothers, so I ended up in my mom and stepdad's care. My dad tried to get visitation, but my mom blocked him as much as she could, and that's why he could only show up at birthdays. Apparently, Dad never loved another woman, and that's the reason he never had any more kids. He died with a broken heart, if the letter is to be believed. Listen, I'm taking this all with a grain of salt, I know. I've heard my mom's side of the story all my life, now I'm hearing my father's. I have no doubt that both parties are embellishing things, leaving things out and editing the narrative to make themselves seem more sympathetic. It's just that, until now, I'd never even heard my father's side. And that's why it's throwing me for an absolute loop. I asked my stepdad if it was true that my mom and he had been having an affair behind my dad's back. And he got all moody and sullen. But finally he admitted it was the truth. I was upset enough, honestly. My childhood was being turned upside down on itself. Everything I believed about my parents, relationships, and divorce proved to be untrue. It was then, though, that my little brother decided to get involved. He called me up the other night, trying to be casual, but I knew he had something on his mind. He barely ever calls me, and we usually text once or twice a month, and he had this crappy tone in his voice. He asked me about work, how I was doing. But when I finally snapped at him and told him to cut to the chase, he blurted out that I should give him half of my inheritance. I didn't even know what to say.
I hadn't even told him about my dad's death or the money. The only person I told was my stepdad. But clearly, he'd gone running to my brother to tell him. I should have known better than to talk to my stepdad about it. He's always just some sort of pushover when it comes to my little brother. But I just wanted to get to the bottom of the situation and sort out my thoughts. I laughed at first. I really thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He got all ratty with me when I laughed and told me that it isn't fair that I get so much money, especially when he's the one who's in debt and unemployed, when I have a well-paying job. I was in awe at the audacity of this kid. Really? Who did he think he was? I said as much and he started crying. He was making these fake sobbing noises, wailing that he was in so much trouble. He owed so much money, but I wasn't buying it. The waterworks might work on my stepfather, but they don't on me. I've watched this kid grow up into the spoiled, entitled brat that he is. Once he realized that the tears weren't going to cut it, he changed tactics. He started yelling at me, really bellowing over the phone, telling me that I was a selfish jerk, saying really, really nasty, horrible things. He said it's no wonder my dad abandoned me, and that he understood how my mom would leave my dad if he was anything like me. This didn't get to me either, honestly. I was just sitting on my couch with my phone at my arm's length while he screamed at me. He clearly had not got the full story from his dad if he was bringing up my dad abandoning me. I'd like to say that he would not have the audacity to speak to me that way if he'd known that his father was the reason my parents broke up. And I was left without a father for my entire life, but I think that would be expecting too much of him, right? Well, he was grasping at the end of the phone call, out of breath after his tirade, and I was just in shock. Yeah, I mean, we've never been close, but he's still my brother. Never until now have I thought of him as my half-brother. He was never anything but my little bro. But now I'm really reevaluating that, and I knew he was spoiled, and I knew he liked to push his dad around, but I never thought that he'd have the nerve to try it on me. I guess I've always given him a pass for being emotionally stunted and immature, because he was still a kid when Mom died. But honestly, he has some balls to speak to me like that. When Mom died, my stepdad was in bed for months, and I had to be the one to take care of everything. I paid the bills, I drove my brother to school, I cleaned the house, I brought my stepdad his meals 3 times a day, and took them back untouched and after a few hours. I washed this kid's gym socks, and he has the audacity to cop an attitude with me, now not sharing something he has no claim to. Yeah, I'm done with him. I feel betrayed by my stepfather also for running and telling my brother my business as soon as he heard it, like it was a fresh gossip off the press, rather than real and actual real emotional turmoil I was going through. But I shouldn't be surprised. Even before Mom died, my brother has walked all over his father and gotten whatever he wanted. I'm pretty sure my stepdad still pays his bills for him, and I know for a fact he does his laundry. This has just made it clear that those two are their own separate family, and I'm on my own now, to be honest. I'm going to call my stepfather tomorrow and talk to him about this. I doubt he's even on board with the crazy plan. He's soft to my brother's face, but he's always working behind the scenes to offset all his crazy ideas. I'm going to ask him how I should deal with this. There's no part of me that wants to share my dad's money with my brother. I think he met my dad maybe 3 times in his entire life. Well, the thing is, if my brother had asked for a loan, I would have given it to him without a second thought. I would have even paid off his debt and his student loans without even expecting him to pay me back. Heck, I was half considering it before he even called me. But now he's not getting a dime. He's greedy, and he flew too close to the sun, and now he's paying for it. I honestly don't even think I'm the a-hole in this situation, but I know that people here are super active, so I thought I'd put a post up, just getting everything off my chest. I've talked to my friends about it, obviously, but I need the opinion of unbiased strangers of the interweb. I don't need you guys to tell me if I'm in the wrong or not, because I know for a fact I'm not. I'm just hoping you guys can maybe give me some advice on how to handle the situation effectively and communicate that my brother is not getting $1.
Update number 1. So, I called my stepdad out for lunch to discuss everything, and things did not go as planned. He actually thinks that I should split the money with my brother. He said that it would be selfish not to. I'm in shock. I always knew that my stepdad loved my brother more than me, and I got over that a long time ago. It's natural to have a preference for your own child, but never in my life did I expect him to be so blatant about it. My entire life, he's made sure that I don't call him dad, and he's told me that he isn't my father. Let me know, in the gentlest and kindest possible way, that when he dies, I won't be getting a single thing from him. Not even one little bit. Well, but now when it comes to his own son, he's flipping the script. Apparently, it's not fair for my brother to be in debt and me not to be, when we both got money when Mom died. I asked him how it made sense for me to give my money up when I'm the one who paid off my student loans, and he's the one who blew his inheritance from my mom on video game consoles and sneakers, then had to sell them all 3 years later to make rent. Well, the logic seemed to be going in one of my father's ears and out the other, bouncing around in his seemingly empty skull for a while and flying out the other, because he was completely ignoring my point. So, I have 3 days to transfer half the money to my brother, or I'm dead to him. His words, not mine. I don't think these bozos have ever considered the fact that they're going to get taxed on this so hard that they'll barely even see a cent. I don't have to pay taxes on my inheritance because there's no inheritance tax in my state. But there sure is transfer your brother over $1 million tax. Well, the pair of them are clueless about money and neither are good at saving. They're just being greedy. I don't even know why my stepdad is lobbying for my brother, when we both know that he won't be seeing a cent of that money if I do give in, which I won't. I tried to explain to him the double standard in expecting me to give half of my inheritance to my brother, when it's been made clear to me from the day one that my stepdad met me that I won't get a thing when he dies. But he just rolls his eyes. I pretty much shut down after that. I stopped responding to all his dumb arguments and I pretty much just retreated into myself. I think he could tell that I wasn't listening because he left pretty soon after. I know for a fact that the first thing he did when he left the restaurant was call my brother and update him on the situation. Because not even 10 minutes later, I get a call from him. I was considering letting the phone ring to send him a message, but I wanted to know what he had to say. He was doing the fake sobbing again, and I just couldn't take him seriously. I told him that if he was so desperate for an inheritance, he should go and wait for his own father to die, and I hung up the phone. I do feel like that might have been a bit too harsh. I really do. But at this point, I really don't know how else to impress upon the bozos that they're not getting a dime from me. Not in a million years. Obviously, I don't wish death on my stepdad. He helped raise me, for goodness sakes, but the way he's been behaving right now is absolutely insane. He should know better. The thing is this. I would have expected this kind of thing from my brother. He hates it when other people just get things and he doesn't. Mom and Dad used to have to buy him his own present on my birthday, or he would throw a fit and break things out of rage and jealousy. Whenever I commented on how unfair it was that he got something on my birthday, but I got nothing on his, I was told that I'm older and much more mature. Well, this is pretty much par the course for this kid. It's not like I knew that he was going to do this. Even if I didn't think he had this much audacity, I was sure he would whine and moan behind my back about how unfair the whole situation actually was. I did not think he'd launch this immature attack on me. It's the way my stepdad is acting that's really getting me down. I loved him like a father all my life. He raised me. He came to all my dance recitals, brought me horse riding. He did everything a father does. Sure, he always told me that he was not my father, but it did hurt. But in my head, he was my father figure. I always knew he preferred my brother, but I didn't expect him to take his side so aggressively like this. I'd expect him to pretend to be sympathetic to my brother, pat him on the back and tell him he was right. It is unfair, but I would have thought he'd secretly been on my side. My stepdad has never taken such an obvious side with my brother before. That's the problem. When we fought as kids, he would send me to my room even if I wasn't the one in the wrong. But he would always sneak up to see me later and just apologize, give me a hug and tell me I was right. Sometimes he'd even bring up a chocolate bar and tell me not to tell my brother. That's the kind of thing I expected. He always took my brother's side when he was in the room. But he always let me know privately that I was right. That's why I'm so taken aback for all this. I haven't been in my room with both my brother and stepdad at the same time in 6 months? So why the heck is my stepdad still putting on this performance? He's not a stupid guy. He has to know that I don't owe my brother anything. Anyways, here's my little update. I'm in the car right now, I just left the restaurant, and I thought you guys might be curious about how everything's been working out. I highly doubt that this is the end of it, so I'll probably be back on here soon to update. Thank you. Update number 2. I was right when I said things would not be over yet, but even I'm shocked at what this little rat did. Guys, he called the cops on me. I got a call yesterday afternoon from a cop asking me to come to the station and give a statement, because my brother is trying to get me arrested for not giving him his rightful heir. I'm in amazement. I seriously am. He didn't even tell the cops the whole story, obviously. He just said that I owed him money and refused to pay him. So, when I explained the real situation, the poor cops were so embarrassed that they made me come down to the station. They apologized so much. I thought they were going to get on their knees or something. I had to show them emails from my dad's lawyers that specifically stated I am my dad's only child. Then I showed them texts from my brother and my stepdad that say right there on the screen that they weren't related to my birth father in any way. So, I went home and I called my brother right away. I didn't even get the little rat a chance to speak. I just yelled at him louder than I've ever yelled at anyone in my life. I called him spoiled. I called him a brat. I told him he should be on his knees thanking me for the holiday, the family together, when my mom died. I aired out every grievance I've ever had with him, and then I told him never to call me again. It felt good. It felt cathartic, but I was still in a blind rage. I called my stepdad, and I know people are going to think I'm dumb for this, but I called him expecting him to know what my brother had done. I thought if he finally realized what an idiot my brother was being and how far he was taking all this, I thought that he would come to his senses and finally rein in his child, but oh no. He's known all about it. The jerk actually suggested it. I'm just shaking with anger right now. I'm trying to keep my language in check. I know there are kids on here, but I'm just so angry. I feel let down. I feel betrayed. But the hurt's like 25% of what I'm feeling now, and the rest is just pure rage. Who the heck are these guys to act like they owed a piece of my inheritance? The only thing left from my father, who is my stepfather, to be the reason my dad died with a broken heart. The very man my mom cheated on my dad with, and then disrespect him even more from the afterlife. The audacity of these idiots is astounding. They have zero credibility in this, and I have that from the mouths of 3 cops who were just as shocked as I was when their idiocy came to light. They're dead to me, and I don't feel guilty saying it. I'm officially disowning them as family members, as far as I'm concerned. After the deaths of my mom and dad, I was left with nobody. No family at all. I don't care what kind of trouble they get into. I don't care if it's the mafia's threatening to cut their fingers off. Neither of them ever have the right to ask me for money. Well, sorry for the big rant. When I hung up on my stepdad yesterday, I called up a few of my friends and went to the bar right away. I drowned my anger in everything I could find. And I'm only sobering up and coming to my senses now. I was enraged yesterday, then I drank till I blacked out and forgot about it. Well, now I'm back to enraged again today. Unfortunately, I don't think it's healthy to get blackout drunk 2 days in a row to run from your troubles. So, instead, I'm trying to find catharsis by writing everything down to share with you all, good people. Well, it's not working, and going back over everything is just bringing me right back. Thanks anyways. Update 3, final update. Well, I had to call the cops. That's a really dramatic first line, I know that, but I just wanted to get it out of the way before I jump straight into this. It's been 8 months since I last posted that update, and I was expecting everything to go back to normal, but good goodness, it did not. At the end of my phone calls with both my brother and my stepdad, I told both of them not to contact me ever again. I was happy enough to just cut them out of my life, no questions asked. I don't know why I expected them to actually listen to me though. Probably just some naiveness lingering and affection for them, but that's gone now. They both called me nonstop. Every time I went to sleep, I woke up with hundreds of text messages from them. So many missed calls. Calls I couldn't even count. The tone of them ranged a lot, went from pleading to anger to telling me mom would be disappointed in me for leaving my brother out. I thought they'd stop with time, lose their momentum maybe. Oh no, they didn't. After a week of this, I blocked both of their numbers. I don't know why I waited a week, but I did. After a few days apiece where I thought it was over, they started calling me on new numbers. I didn't recognize them, so I did answer the phone. Unfortunately, when the angry text started coming in, I put 2 and 2 together again, and I blocked them again, and they got new numbers. I was kind of scared at this point. It's been 2 months of continuous harassment. Eventually, I gave in and got a new number myself, in hopes that they've been stopping calling if the number they had disconnected, but oh no. Of course not. I had to update everybody at work, all my friends, cousins, and somehow they got a hold of my new number. I don't know if someone gave it to them or what, but at this point I was starting to feel unsafe. At the same time as their phone calls, I started getting strange letters in the mail. Threatening ones. There were knocks on my door in the middle of the night. I was a mess, honestly. I didn't know what to do. This was just so far outside of my realm of possibilities I could ever have come up with. It's like I didn't recognize these people. I don't know, I tried calling the cops a few times, but they just always told me that there's no crime being committed, so there's nothing that they could do. It was definitely scary. I always heard people say that money changes people, but I never imagined that people in my life would go this far. I ended up moving houses. Thanks to the money that started this mess, I managed to buy an apartment in a different part of town. It's nicer, and I'm closer to my friends, so I am happy with it. I just had to get out of that last place, because I didn't feel safe knowing that they knew where I lived. Especially with the strange noises and the knocking on my door at 4 a.m. I changed my phone number again too, and this was about 2 months ago. Everything calmed down these past 2 months. I was more careful with who I gave my number to. And, well, I made sure to only tell close friends where my new apartment was. I thought that everything had blown over, and I was finally starting to relax. But a few days ago, things changed, and it got bad again. I was out for an hour or two getting groceries, then I had lunch with a friend. When I got home, my door had been kicked in. Someone broken into my home and trashed the place. I called the cops, and finally they were able to do something to protect me. My brother and stepfather were arrested. I don't think that they were the ones who broke in, but I'm 100% sure that they paid somebody to do it. I'm fine if they rot away in prison. The cops found texts between them planning all this harassment, so there's evidence at least, and I've been told that my best option is to file a restraining order. What really bugs me is that I don't know who it was that told them my new address. Now, on top of losing a brother, my stepdad, and my birth father, I'm going to have to comb through my close friends, one by one, try to figure out which one of them is the rat, and put my safety in danger. I'm definitely pressing charges. I don't care if I have to pay for an amazing lawyer. I'm not letting them get away with this at all. I'm going to use the money they wanted and hire the best therapist in state while they're rotting. I'm going mad like crazy. This was kind of a wild ride, I know. I just want to say that I appreciate all you guys for sticking it out with me through it all. My final piece of advice is, y'all, to this. If you come into a lot of money, don't you tell a soul.
Story 4.
My name is James, the prodigy child of my family. I've always been the top of my class, captain of the debate team, and elected class delegate each year. I lived in a small town in a comfortable house with my parents, who showered me with unconditional love and supported me in all my endeavors. Home life was peaceful. We had family dinners, watched movies together on weekends, had barbecues in our backyard during the summer. My parents would often tell me stories about their youth, their challenges, and their triumphs. These stories were like life lessons to me, and I always admired their perseverance. Apart from my parents, another person profoundly influenced me, my cousin Alex. We spent our childhood together, sharing the same games, the same laughter, and the same secrets. Alex was more than a cousin to me. He was like a brother. His house was a few blocks away from mine, which made our mutual visits frequent and effortless. While I was a bookworm, Alex had a knack for basketball. He was the star of his high school basketball team. I admired him greatly for his agility and endurance. We supported each other in our respective endeavors, and there was never a sense of competition between us. However, as we approached our teenage years, I began to notice a shift in Alex's attitude towards me. He became distant and less enthusiastic about spending time with me. Every time we were together, I felt a certain tension, as if something was bothering him. There was a discomfort between us that had never existed before. This change left me puzzled and saddened, and I wonder if I had done something to cause this rift between us. However, as we approached adolescence, I started to notice a shift in Alex's attitude towards me. He became distant and less enthusiastic, about spending time with me. Whenever we were together, I felt a certain tension, as if something was bothering him. There was uneasiness between us that never existed before. This change left me absolutely puzzled and saddened. I wondered if I had done something to create this chasm between us. The situation worsened when I began to notice jealousy in his behavior. Each time I got a good grade or succeeded in my extracurriculars, I could sense a certain bitterness in him. It was as if each success I experienced was deepening the divide between us. I was bewildered. I did not understand why Alex, who had always been like a brother to me, had changed so drastically. I didn't know who to talk or how to address the issue. This feeling of confusion and powerlessness intensified over time, creating a tension-filled aura around me. My mind was constantly preoccupied with this question. Why was Alex acting this way towards me? Well, despite the growing tension between Alex and me, I could not find the courage to talk to him about it. It was then I decided to seek a little bit of help. I turned to Emily, our mutual friend and longtime confidant. I always appreciated her wisdom and honesty, and I knew that she could help me navigate this maze of feelings. One evening after school, Emily and I met at our usual coffee shop, and I described the situation, detailing each incident and expressing my anxiety and confusion. Emily listened attentively, a serious expression on her face. After a long contemplation, she began to speak. She told me about a conversation she had with Alex a few weeks ago. He had expressed his frustration and resentment towards me, and he felt constantly compared to me, and he's tired of failing to meet these certain expectations. Digging deeper, Emily revealed that it was Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily, Alex's parents, who were pushing this comparison. They were constantly highlighting my achievements and insinuating that Alex should be more like me. Emily's confession left me stunned. I've never thought that Alex's rivalry could stem from his own parents. It hurt to realize that our parents, who should have been our biggest supporters, had sown discord between us. The weight of this revelation was overwhelming, but it also provided certain clarity. I finally understood that the source of Alex's resentment. The realization left me furious and powerless. My respect for Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily was shaken. I was angry at them for manipulating Alex's self-esteem and for creating a divide between us. I realized I had a responsibility towards Alex as a cousin, as a near brother, to rectify this injustice. I decided it was time for me to do something to retaliate. That night, as I walked home, I was filled with determination. I decided to break the silence and reveal Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily's manipulation. I knew it would be a tough battle, but I was ready to fight it for Alex. The upcoming family gathering would be the stage for my confrontation. My heart pounded at the thought of what was to come, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Grandfather Arthur's birthday finale arrived a week later. As always, everyone was there, gathered in Grandpa and Grandma's large dining room. Laughter and cheerful chatter filled the air, but I was anxious. I had decided this was the perfect time to reveal the truth. Looking at Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily, I felt a knot form in my stomach, but when I met Alex's gaze, I knew I had to go ahead. And I quote, "After the birthday cake and the songs, I asked for silence, stating that I had something important to say. The conversation gradually died down and all eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath and started to speak. I unveiled Alex's silent struggle, how Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily constantly compared him to me, thus fueling his jealousy and resentment. A shocked silence followed my words. I saw many incredulous looks turn towards Uncle Richard and Aunt Lily. I saw Alex looking at me with wide eyes, surprised but also relieved. This was the moment of truth, and even though my heart was pounding, I was convinced that I had done the right thing. After my speech, a deafening silence fell over the room. Alex was looking at me with eyes of an enraged beast. Aunt Lily, known for her outspokenness, was the first to break the silence, and I quote you, "James, you are completely off base. Alex is our son. Why would we push him to be jealous of you?" Her voice was firm, trying to regain control of the situation. Uncle Richard chimed in, a forced smile in his face.
You're mistaken, James. We've never compared Alex to you. We simply want him to be the best he can be."
I shook my head. What you say and what you do are two different things. You don't see how your words affect Alex. You're pushing him to his limit. Well, I was surprised by my own passion and conviction. Unsurprisingly, my uncle and aunt began to vehemently deny my claims, reiterating their innocence and confusion about the current situation. Their attitude reinforced my belief that they were refusing just to accept the truth and take responsibility for their actions. Despite their denial, the tension was palpable in the room. Their faces were tense, betraying their surprise and irritation at my accusations. They were used to being respected and listened to, and this open challenge to their authority was not something they were, accustomed to handling. As the conflict escalation became more intense, I could feel the effect of my words on the family members. Some were shocked, others seemed embarrassed, but the majority seemed concerned. Despite everything, I knew I had to continue fighting for the truth, not only for myself but also for Alex. My confrontation with my uncle and aunt took more energy and courage than I ever could have imagined. However, I was determined not to back down. If I did not break this silence, who would? "James is right," said Mary Ann, the oldest daughter of my Uncle George. Her voice was trembling with emotion and the words pressing in her throat. "Aunt Lily and Uncle Richard, you've never stopped comparing us to all of us." Well, Mary Ann drew a deep breath, memories of past years reflecting in her eyes, and "When I failed my driving test, you laughed in my face, saying that neither of you would ever make such a mistake. You made a spectacle of me defeating in front of my whole family, stating that I was less than you." I could sense a shadow of pain crossing her face, but she remained upright, determined to make her voice heard. "I was just a teenager at the time, and you made me feel worse. You made me feel worthless." Well, to my great surprise, my outburst had given courage to other family members who had remained silent all this time. After a silent pause, Uncle George stood up and his face grave.
And let's not forget how you criticized my decisions to change careers, Richard. You told me I must be crazy, that I was putting my family at risk, and that I should be more like you. You planted doubt in my mind and made me feel inadequate, but I'm happy with my choices, and so is my family." Then Aunt Elise spoke up, tears in her eyes. "Lily, you've never stopped criticizing me about my weight. You compared me to my mother, saying she was thin, more beautiful. You even made derogatory remarks about my dress on my wedding day, the most special day of my life, the day I was supposed to feel the most beautiful. You made me feel worthless, unworthy, and ugly." Every revealed story was a stab, tearing the veil of the family harmony to reveal the ugliness beneath. Richard and Lily's antagonism, their insistent comparison, and their manipulative behavior were now exposed to all, adding to the drama of the situation. The whisper of the conversations died out, replaced by a heavy silence at the truth. Well, it unfolded before us. A shocked silence filled the room as the words of Marianne, George, and Elise hung in the air. Nobody moved, until Richard suddenly rose, knocking his chair back with a metallic squeak that seemed to tear the palpable tension. His eyes swept the assembly, a mixture of anger and indignation etched in his face.
So that's it,"
he said with a bitter laugh.
"Ugh, this is what you all think of us, huh? Well, I'll tell you this. We never intended to harm anyone. We simply wanted the best for our son."
Lily, at his side, looked at him with an expression of surprise. Her lips parted as if to protest, but no sound came out. Alex, silent and still throughout the confrontation, slowly stood up. His face was ashen, and his eyes betrayed a mix of shock, confusion, sadness. He looked around him, then followed his parents out without saying a word.
"I'm sorry, Grandfather Arthur,"
Richard muttered as he passed by him, lips pursed. And with those words they left the room, leaving behind a deafening silence and family in a shock. Their departure was the perfect embodiment of the tension that had just unfolded. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're enjoying your day. So, today's story does have a few updates to hop into, and man, what a family feud we find ourselves in. Okay, 3 updates. Guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, take a second right now and click that subscribe button. It deeply supports me, and I really appreciate that. Here is update number 1. Hey guys, it's been a week since I last posted my story, and I have a shocking update for you. After the tense family meeting, we drove back home, my parents and me, and the atmosphere in the car was heavy with silence. Each of us lost in our own thoughts. I was still troubled by the day's events and the growing animosity between Alex and me. Once, at home, I felt a heavy presence that did not match the unusual atmosphere. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and to my utter surprise, there was Alex standing right in front of me, his face bloody. It was clear that something serious happened, so I said, "Alex, what are you doing here?" I asked, a mix of confusion and concern with my voice. He lowered his head, hesitating to answer, and says,
"James, I've been kicked out of my home. My parents, they're furious with me because of the family meeting."
My confusion quickly turned into indignation. How could his parents act like this toward their own son? I immediately felt called to act, to understand the truth behind the situation, so I said, "Alex, come in," indicating him to come inside. I immediately called my parents, who were completely stunned by what they were seeing. Were Richard and Lily capable of doing such a thing to their own son? The situation was evidently more serious than we first thought, and my father just immediately grabbed his coat and rushed to the hospital, as he was shivering heavily from walking for nearly half an hour on a cold night. During all this time, I could not help but think, did I do right by exposing Alex's parents' behavior in front of the whole family? Did Richard and Lily do this just to make me pay for speaking up? Will Alex forgive me for what I've done? Once back home, we settled in with my parents and Alex in the living room, and I said, "All right, tell us what happened." And Alex recounted in detail the events that had unfolded after the family meeting. He told us everything. After the exhausting family meeting, Alex went home, hoping to find some comfort from his parents, but unfortunately what he, experienced that night was far from what he ever expected. No sooner had he crossed the threshold than Richard and Lily started verbally attacking him. Their words were harsh, their words were cruel, filled with anger and resentment, and they blamed Alex for the confrontation at the meeting and for humiliating the family. Their behavior quickly degenerated into an explosion of rage. Without any restraint, they started yelling, hurling insults and throwing objects around the room. That's when Richard slapped him hard and kicked him out of the house in the middle of the dark night.
Terror and shock overcame Alex as he found himself trapped in a hostile environment. He struggled to understand how his own parents could inflict such emotional and physical violence on him. The house he once considered a haven of peace had become a true nightmare. Anger began to bubble up in me, but I took a deep breath to stay calm and support Alex. I'm truly sorry for what you've been through, Alex. It's all my fault. I should have never spoken out in front of everybody, I said with empathy. And he said,
"Oh, I've been blinded for too long by these two trash. You freed me from their grip. Everything's clear now in my mind. That's worth 2 broken ribs and a facial scar."
With a determined air, I said, Alex, I'm here for you, and we will get through this together. Your parents have acted unacceptably, and we'll need to do something for it to change. That's the moment Alex looked at me with a mix of relief and vulnerability in his gaze, and he had found refuge at my house, seeking support and understanding in this dark period of his life. Well, of our lives. I realized how much he needed our family, our love, and our solidarity. With determination, I decided that we would not let this situation continue. We discussed with my parents our options, the best way to confront Richard and Lily and show them the consequences of their actions. I was determined to expose the truth and support Alex no matter what. The psychological suffering he had endured over the past years and the violence he had suffered the night could not go unpunished. Update number 2. When my parents, Alex and I, made the decision to contact Child Protective Services, we knew it was a crucial step to ensure Alex's safety and well-being. We were determined to confront Richard and Lily, the perpetrators of the abuse, and hold them fully accountable for their actions. We quickly got in touch with social workers who were attentive and understanding. They listened carefully to our story and examined the evidence that we gathered, understanding the seriousness of the situation and the physical and emotional consequences it had on Alex. The social workers decided to launch a thorough investigation just to protect Alex and assess the severity of the abuse. It emerged that Alex had experienced various forms of psychological mistreatment from his father. These abuses included constant insults, public humiliation, and emotional manipulation aimed at controlling and demeaning Alex. These traumatic experiences deeply impacted his self-esteem and confidence. In the following weeks, we fully cooperated with him, providing all the necessary information and evidence to support our allegations. Meanwhile, Alex was placed in a safe environment and received psychological support to help him heal his emotional wounds. The legal process was long and sometimes exhausting, but we held on to the hope that justice would be served. Finally, the day of judgment arrived, filled with tension and emotion, and the court reviewed the overwhelming of evidence, heard testimonies from family members, including myself, and highlighted Richard and Lily's abusive behavior and neglect as parents. After careful deliberation, the court makes a decision in favor of protecting Alex. Richard and Lily lost custody of their son and faced legal proceedings for abuse and neglect. Finally, they had to face the consequences of their destructive actions. This outcome was a relief for all of us, but I still felt a burning anger inside me. I was determined for Richard and Lily to understand the extent of the suffering they inflicted on Alex and our family. That's when I devised a thoughtful plan of retaliation, aiming to make the judgment public and expose the truth to a wider audience. I contacted a local newspaper and provided them with all the necessary details about the case. I explained Alex's story, the abuse he endured, and I just wanted the public to be informed about the gravity of the situation and for justice to be served not only in the courtroom, but also at the court of public opinion. The newspaper published a detailed article about the case, shedding light on Richard and Lily's actions and the court's decision. The article had a significant impact, drawing attention and outrage from the public. Many people expressed their support for Alex and our family, condemning the abuse and calling for stricter measures to protect children who are victims of maltreatment. However, my plan took an unexpected turn. Among the readers of the article, a former friend of Richard and Lily came forward. He had lost contact with them for a long time, but when he learned about the atrocities committed by this couple, he was shocked and felt the need to do something. This friend turned out to be a lawyer specializing in children's rights. He immediately offered to represent our family in legal proceedings against Richard and Lily, offering his skills, expertise to achieve full justices, and this unexpected turn of events filled us with hope and gratitude. The alliance with this experienced lawyer strengthened our position in the fight against Richard and Lily, and we felt supported and encouraged in our quest for justice. Vengeance took a different turn. Instead of seeking direct retribution, we put all our efforts into obtaining a fair and meaningful conviction. With the help of our new ally, we were determined to use the legal system to ensure that Richard and Lily were held accountable for their actions and to protect other children from such atrocities. Update number 3. This is the final update. The legal process that followed the court's decision was grueling, but ultimately Richard and Lily had to face the consequences of their destructive actions. The overwhelming evidence and compelling testimonies led to their conviction for abuse and neglect towards Alex. Unable to bear the public humiliation and the repercussions of his actions, Richard fell into deep distress. Instead of reflecting on his wrongdoing or seeking redemption, he made a tragic and irreversible decision. He took his own life. The news was shocking to all of us, despite the reprehensible acts he committed. As for Lily, she attempted to evade responsibility by choosing to flee the state without notifying anyone. Her actions only reinforced our belief that she did not deserve custody of Alex. We promptly informed the authorities of her disappearance, but despite the search effort, she remained untraceable. In these tragic circumstances, my parents, Logan and Elise, made a life-changing decision that would impact all of us. They decided to adopt Alex. Although it involved significant adjustment in our family, we knew it was the best thing to do, just to ensure Alex's happiness and well-being. We initiated the legal process for adoption, providing all the necessary documents and meeting all the requirements. During this period, Alex stayed with us, gradually integrating into our family, and we did everything in our power to provide him with a loving, warm, and secure environment where he would finally feel at home. Social workers and professionals involved in the adoption process evaluated our home and took into account Alex's own opinion and feelings. They recognized that we were a loving and committed family, ready to offer Alex all the love and support he needed to rebuild his life. After a rigorous and emotionally challenging adoption process, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Alex's adoption was officially approved by the court. We were all filled with joy and happiness as we welcomed Alex as our full-fledged family member. Today, Alex is a loved and respected member of our family. He's found his place and built strong bonds with each of us. We're grateful just to have provided him with a loving home to help him heal.
Story 5.
Hey everyone, I'm fairly new to this group, but I wanted to share my story and get some advice if I can. I'm 28 and female, recently welcomed 2 beautiful baby girls into my life through surrogacy. My husband and I have been married for the past 3 years and have always agreed from the beginning of the relationship that we wanted to have kids as soon as we could. We started trying to get pregnant right after we got married, but unfortunately, after 1.5 years of trying, we were told that we were medically unable to have a baby. My womb is apparently not the right shape to be able to nurture a fetus for the duration of a pregnancy, which was news that broke my heart. Because my husband's perfectly healthy, we decided to look into surrogacy, as we would now be able to use DNA from the both of us. It was very important to us that our baby be biologically ours. And saying this, we would have been perfectly happy adopting a child, as the most important thing for us being parents. We did want to have that deep connection if possible, so as I said, surrogacy was the next best option. Some background before we get into it though. My brother and I are fraternal twins, and so have always been attached at the hip ever since we were kids. We have always gave our honest opinion about the partners that we brought home and always valued each other's perspectives. When he brought home his now wife, I'll be honest, I did not expect it to last as long as it has, but I never really disliked her. They've been married for 4 years now, and she and I have been able to grow closer since she's been a part of the family. She and my brother had a child shortly into their marriage, and so my husband and I were very open with them about their pregnancy journey. When my husband and I decided to think about surrogacy, my sister-in-law immediately volunteered herself, explaining that she would be happy to involve in us finally having a baby, and loved the idea of our child and their child being connected in this way. My husband and I were weary at first, as we've been told by some professionals that involving family in situations like this can be very complicated, but at the end of the day, money was a big factor, as it always is. If we were to go through the agency and find somebody to carry our baby, it's going to cost upwards of $100,000, and we just didn't have that kind of money to spend despite saving for the past few years. My sister-in-law offered to go through the whole process for only $3,000, and asked that we just cover her medical expenses for the duration of the period. After taking time to think it over and discuss it between us, my husband and I agreed to let her be our surrogate. To be honest, as well as the financial aspect, we did love the idea of our baby being carried by somebody who's part of the family. Everything was going perfectly fine at the beginning. We brought my sister-in-law to the clinic to have the insemination done, took her home afterwards, and basically just stood by her until the pregnancy was confirmed. Things continued to go smoothly up until the first ultrasound date when all 4 of us were given some surprising news. As we were all family, my brother was very involved in the process as well. He loved the idea of our kids being so connected by one womb. So, he made sure to be present for as much of the pregnancy as he could. As I said, we were surprised at the appointment to find out that my sister-in-law was carrying not 1, but 2 babies. Twins. Well, twins did not run in my family, as my brother and I are evidence of, but we never expected it to happen to us. We were all taken aback by the news, but took it in stride, as we did not see it as the biggest deal in the world. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, got very worked up when she heard the news. She began to panic, and it took quite a while to calm her down again. She told us that she'd prepare herself to carry 1 baby, as she had done it before, but was freaking out at the idea of having 2 babies, as well as the fact that she would be giving them to us after their birth. She was able to eventually get used to the idea as time went on, but as she went into the 3rd trimester, she began to have some health problems, including developing pregnancy diabetes. She quickly became high risk, and the babies had to be born a few weeks early, for their safety as well as my sister-in-law's. As a result, both she and the babies had to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for the past 4 weeks, just to ensure that all 3 of them were in no medical danger. My husband and I were told last week that we were able to take the babies home, so we've had them here for the past few days. I won't lie, it's been difficult so far, as my sister-in-law's come to stay with us as well, to breastfeed them and continue their skin-to-skin contact. To be honest with you, I'm feeling jealous of her, as I have not been able to have any quality time with my babies in the months since they were born. My sister-in-law has spent every single second with them, for their own well-being of course, but she's been able to develop the maternal bond that I haven't. I tried to prepare myself for this as much as I could, as I was aware before agreeing to surrogacy that it would be a bit more difficult to bond with my baby initially, due to not carrying them myself. But the complications of the pregnancy and the resulting 4 weeks of quality time my sister-in-law had with them in the NICU have left me a bit unsure of how my role is within the dynamic. So this is my dilemma right now. I don't want to have anything to do or make my sister-in-law feel uncomfortable or unwelcome, but at the same time, she has been able to develop a maternal relationship with my babies that I have not had the chance to do yet, and I'm just worried that if it goes on too much longer, they won't truly see me as their mother, even though I am. I'm sure some of you are screaming at me that this is one of the complications of having a family member be your surrogate. And yeah, I understand now. But there's the moment I just want to do what's best for all of us. So, in saying that, if anyone has any words of advice they could share with me on how to navigate this situation as smoothly as possible, I would really appreciate it. Thanks for reading. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So, we do have quite a few updates to hop into, and if you think it's a wild ride so far, you've seen nothing yet. If you want more daily videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and here is update number 1. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been a bit over a month since I wrote my post about my surrogacy journey, and before I get into the update, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who reached out and their words of support and advice. It really means a lot to me to know that there are people out there sending me good energy throughout this process, and that I'm not alone in the struggle of bonding with my babies. In saying that, I did get some rude messages telling me that I should have expected things to be complicated since my husband and I chose to have a family member be our surrogate. As I said in the original post, I'm well aware of this, and the financial aspect was the biggest influencer in our decision. We can all look back and say we would have done things differently if we knew then what we know now, but having those regrets does nothing to change the situation that we're in now. At the end of the day, we made our choice. We're in this position now. And sending condescending messages does not really change anything. So, my babies have been home for about 6 weeks now, and things have been able to settle down somewhat. My sister-in-law stayed with us for about 2 weeks in order to make sure the girls were doing okay, but she and my brother decided to give us some space to bond with our daughters. The few weeks since then have been so great, and I've been able to build my relationship with my girls and develop the maternal bond I've been looking for. Despite the worry I had when writing my initial post, the past few weeks have been full of quality time with the girls, for both me and my husband. Even though my sister-in-law moved out of our home and back in with her husband and their son, she's been checking in quite a bit with us and comes over to see the babies every 2 or 3 days. It's beginning to feel like a bit of suffocation, if I'm honest. Yes, I've been able to bond with them as their mother, but I do believe that my sister-in-law feels an entitlement to them since she carried them for 9 months. We all signed a surrogacy agreement before beginning the process, detailing that upon the child, or children in this case, birth, my sister-in-law handed over all legal rights to us as the legitimate parents. So, in this case, we did everything according to the law. And so my husband and I are the legal parents, which would be useful if things got more serious than they are. I don't think my sister-in-law particularly cares about the legality of the situation, though, as I think she feels that she would be able to spend as much time with the girls as she wants. As of now, my husband and I will continue to let my sister-in-law come see our daughters, as we do totally understand that she developed a love for them over the 9 months that they were inside of her. We don't want to take that bond away from her, but we are aware that it could get messy as things progress further. Things are fine in the meantime, as the girls are still newborns and my sister-in-law is no doubt going through some postpartum emotions, but we will be maintaining our boundaries as time goes on. I don't have much more to add here, just that I'm absolutely in love with my girls. They're the most beautiful babies I've ever seen in the world, and I would have already done anything for them. If everything else falls apart, at least this experience has brought them to me, so I will never regret it. I'll leave this here for now. If anybody wants to reach out with some advice on how to manage the relationship between my sister-in-law and the babies, I would really appreciate it. But as I said above, condescending messages about how I should not have had a family member carry our daughters It's not very helpful and are not appreciated. The decision was made and here we are. That's what matters. Thank you again for reading this. I will be back soon. Update number 2. Hey all, long time no update, I know, but things have been pretty chaotic around here for the past few weeks, so let me explain. A few weeks after my last post, my husband and I decided to talk to my brother and my sister-in-law about her relationship with our girls. It was getting to the point where she would just arrive at our home at all hours of the day without even giving us any notice, just to spend time with the babies. We had to be gracious to her about the situation, as we do understand that she loves them. But we had all talked things through before we agreed to her being our surrogate. We had discussed the fact that despite the expectation that she would grow to care about the babies, because how can you not when you're carrying them inside you for 9 months? She must acknowledge that we are the parent, not her. Again, I do know that us having a close family member as a surrogate was maybe not the best choice, but we did have a lengthy conversation about boundaries with her for this very reason. I know it's naive to think that things would go strictly to plan when emotions get involved, but the bottom line is, my sister-in-law is disrespecting us as the baby's parents and seems to believe that she's more suitable than we are to take care of them. So, after some conversations between my husband and me about how to navigate the discussion with my sister-in-law, we decided to sit down with her about 2 weeks ago and talk things through. It did not go that well, to tell you the truth. She got super upset quite quickly, telling us that she'd grown to really love the girls throughout the pregnancy, especially during the weeks that she spent with them in the hospital. We tried to explain to her that we did not want to stop her from seeing the babies, but that she had to respect the fact that we are the parent, not her. It was a pretty emotional-fueled conversation with a lot of tears shed and raised voices. My sister-in-law got a bit nasty at the end, choosing to remind me that I'm not my daughter's biological mother and that she had a better bond with them than I ever would. My husband and brother then had to get her to leave, as I got really upset by this. We reminded her before she left that we had discussed her relationship with the babies, before she even got pregnant, and that she had even signed a legal document on the matter. As I said, this took place about 2 weeks ago. We had no contact with my sister-in-law up until 2 days ago, and she asked to come over to visit the girls. We said yes, glad that she seemed to be less upset and that she respected our boundaries and asked to come over instead of just showing up. She was much less rude this time, respecting when I brought up the feeding and sleeping schedule I developed for them. And before the conversation, she just waved me off when I told her I needed to feed them or change them, saying she knew they were fine, so it's great to see that she had taken what she said on board. So, that's where we are now. Things got worse and then a little better. We're still trying to navigate this situation as best as we can, and there's bound to be some trial and error. I'm just glad that my sister-in-law has taken what my husband and I said to her under consideration and respects her place in my daughter's lives. I'll leave this here and let you all know how things go moving forward when I can. Thank you again, as always, for reading and for all of the support. Update number 3. I know. It's been quite some time since I last updated you on how parenthood has been for us, especially with our surrogate drama, but we've actually had some other family issues over the past few months. My husband's father got sick a few months back with lung cancer, and unfortunately, he passed 3 weeks ago. Things have been pretty chaotic since then, as my father-in-law had previously been very healthy, and the illness came on quite suddenly. Obviously, he must have been suffering from cancer for some time, but for some reasons he had no symptoms until the very late in the sickness. He collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, and within 3 days he was gone. My husband's absolutely distraught, understandably, so I've just been trying to be there for him as much as I can. We've had to do quite a bit of organizing in the week since he passed, as it was all very sudden, and my mother-in-law's been a mess since losing her husband. My husband's family lives a few hours away, so we both had to spend quite a bit of time away from home. We did not want to disrupt our baby's routines by taking them into an unknown environment while still so young, so we asked my brother and sister-in-law to take care of them while we were gone. Some of you might disagree with us doing this due to the recent issues that we had with boundaries and my sister-in-law, but we reasoned that we needed somebody who genuinely loves the girls to take care of them. We knew that she would make absolutely sure that they were healthy and happy for as long as we were gone. We got back a few days ago after helping out my husband's family as much as we could. We went straight to my brother's house to pick up our girls, and we were so happy to see them, especially my husband. After going through a very emotional week, we just wanted to hug our babies and take them home so we could adjust to the stress and grief of the past few weeks. My sister-in-law had definitely gotten more attached to the girls over 2 weeks than she was looking after them. She was very reluctant to hand them back over to us, offering to take care of them for longer if we needed, even offering for as long as we ever wanted, because she knows that we need more time to grieve. I do believe that she cares about my husband's loss. She's not a horrible person after all, but I do think that she wanted to spend more time with the girls. I'm sure this could become a bigger issue as time goes on, especially given the fact that we'd had to talk to her about boundaries already. But to be honest with you, we did the best we could with the situation we were in. We never in a million years expected such a sudden loss, especially of such a young and healthy man, and so made the decision we made in a fluster of panic and anxiety. The bottom line is that we gave the girls to someone who we trusted to look after them while we were gone, and my sister-in-law did just that. We'll just have to deal with the consequences if there are any later. That's all I have for now. I want to say a huge thank you for everyone who has reached out, though I do apologize for the lack of responses in the past few weeks. I'll do better in the future to reach back out to everybody, as the support of many have shown me over the past few months has been an absolute blessing. Don't worry, I'll be back very soon, but in the meantime, please look after yourself and hug your loved ones. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's been 2 months since my husband arrived home after arranging his father's funeral. As you'll remember, his death was quite sudden, and my husband's still grieving quite heavily, which is to be expected. I was not going to write another update here, as our family's loss is neither relevant to this thread nor anyone's business, to be honest, but a recent development has me needing to vent somewhere. My father-in-law left a last will and testament, and in it, left my husband quite a bit of money. It's enough money to give us quite a comfortable life for the next 2 years or so. My father-in-law used to be the CFO of a quite successful company before retiring a few years ago, and has spent the majority of his professional life saving in order to make life easier for his children and grandchildren. As my husband is the eldest child, and also the only one of his siblings to have children so far, he received the lion's share of the inheritance. Due to the legal process being as annoying and complicated as it is, we won't actually be able to touch the money for a few months, but this is not a problem for us. We'd never expected to be receiving as much money as we were in the first place. We mentioned the inheritance in passing to my brother and sister-in-law last week, and things escalated from there. My sister-in-law pulled me aside just before we left to go home, asking me what I thought about the idea of giving her some of the money we were going to receive. Well, I was shocked at this, to be honest, as the question came totally out of the blue. Things had been a bit tense between us coming back from staying with my husband's family. You'll already remember that my sister-in-law became a bit too attached to our twin daughters due to being our surrogate. Since we returned, she sort of slipped into an old pattern, insisting that she knew what was better for the girls because of their physical connection, and coming over to see them more often than we agreed to. Despite this, my husband and I have been grieving and so actually sort of appreciated the extra help. It seemed that my sister-in-law had slotted herself into our family dynamic and so felt entitled to some of my husband's inheritance. She reasoned with me that she had already asked for less money from us than the surrogacy than we would be asked from anybody else, and so felt this was sort of a bonus.
This was absolutely ridiculous to me,
and I said that to her. By this point, it had almost been 2 years since we had all signed the surrogacy agreement, and so I had not even thought about financial aspect of it in a very long time. I told her that we absolutely would not be giving her any inheritance at all, as we had already gone through the specifics of the surrogacy, and she herself had named the amount of money she wanted us to pay her. I also reminded her that my husband and I had paid for all her medical costs during the pregnancy, and hers had been very high-risky, so she had needed quite a bit of medical care. I again told her that there's no chance of this happening, that she was being unfair in asking this from us, and to please not bring it up to my husband as he's still quite fragile. My sister-in-law was quite irritated at our conversation. I think she genuinely believed that she deserved some of the money due to carrying our babies, which again, I know is a big reason to not have a family member be your surrogate. I have not spoken to her since that we had the conversation, though I've spoken to my brother about it and he was shocked that she would even ask such a thing. My brother and I are twins, and so are close as you can imagine, so his wife's behavior towards me has been quite upsetting for him, which I do feel bad about. I'm just left feeling quite upset about how everything's gone down for the past year or so, as things have become so complicated within our family due to my husband and me choosing my sister-in-law as our surrogate. It's revealed a side to her that I'm weary of, especially because she seems to feel so entitled to our daughters, and now our money. I really do feel for my brother too, as I feel that I've messed up his relationship with his wife. That's all for now, guys. I'm trying to put the situation out of my mind for the time being, especially as I chose not to tell my husband about the conversation with my sister-in-law. He's still reeling from losing his father so suddenly, and he doesn't need this on his plate as well. I'll just say before I go that the messages I received after my last update meant the absolute world to my husband and me. The people in this group are some of the kindest I've ever met in my life, in real life as well as on the internet. Your words of kindness and encouragement have been such a source of positivity for us all, and I always appreciate you for that. Thanks for reading. Speak soon. Update number 5. Nearly a year later. So, things got a bit crazy before they got better, I'm afraid. My sister-in-law reached out to my husband and me shortly after asking for part of my husband's inheritance from his late father. She again asked for a portion of the money, but added that if we did not give her the money she believed that she deserved, then she wants to take 1 or 2 of the twin daughters. That's right. As she felt she earned the right to be their mother after carrying them for 9 months. When I tell you that we were shocked into silence for about 10 minutes after hearing this, I promise I'm not exaggerating. She left this as a message on our machine, saying that if she did not get either the money or the baby, she would be taking legal action against us. We of course knew this wasn't even possible as she signed an official document when agreeing to the surrogacy. She had also provided us with a new recording of her attempt to blackmail us. I'm honestly not sure what she expected to achieve with that message. As you can guess, she and my brother are no longer together. After we told him about the message she sent and played the recording for him, he confronted her and left with their son. He took her to court to get full custody of him on the basis that she's not currently mentally stable, and
the case was definitely ruled into his favor, which no one's surprised about. She sees her son every 2 weeks on supervised visits, but other than that, she's no longer part of the family. We did end up having to take a restraining order against her, as she kept coming to our home insisting on seeing our daughters, and so we haven't heard from her in about 4 months. I do still feel really guilty about how things went with her, as part of me feels that she may not have had the mental episode if she had not agreed to be our surrogate. At this point, my family and I are just trying to heal from the situation, as it's really taken a toll on us combined with losing my husband's father so suddenly. I've been making an effort to speak to my brother as much as I can. As I said, I do feel very guilty about the entire situation. I feel responsible for his marriage breakdown despite him constantly telling me otherwise. I just hope that we're both able to heal together from this whole thing, as it's been quite traumatizing. And saying this, the 2 things that this ordeal has given me, or my 2 beautiful daughters. I'll never regret this journey, as it's brought me 2 angels to me and my husband. And that's the absolute most important thing to me. Well, I'm going to end this here, as I don't have much more to say, and would like to just move forward with the situation with my family. I want to say a huge thank you for the last time to each and every one of you for being there for me throughout this journey. As I've said before, the support I've received from the people in this group have reminded me of the kindness of people, and that means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for everything.
Story 6th.
Let's say if you're going to be the kind of person who gets to have a baby just because you didn't like the first one, well, let me tell you, you don't deserve any baby in the first place. As simple as that. I mean, it's a thought I would have told my parents over 30 years ago when they had me. They would have skipped the experience and gone straight to my sister. So they would not have to leave a person with an existential and sentimental void like I am now. Sorry if I sound very adolescent, it's just that anger makes me write all this in tears. And all because of a couple of individuals suck in their role as parenting. My sister has always been the favorite. The number 1, numero uno. The one who's always got the attention, who was supported in everything. The one, if she needed a sheet of paper for a student project, bought her a whole box of paper. While I, had to save my allowance to be able to buy a soda pop every now and then at school. There was no support in any way for me, not even when I asked them for a set of paints, which they promised to get me and which surely, if they had given it to me, would have awakened the artist in me. But no. They only made me have books. And what they forced me to do is study. Tax law. Also known as the most boring career in the world. I warn you that this is a story of the oldest child being displaced by the youngest in every way possible and in a twisted way. I wished for many years that my parents would have another baby so that she would get displaced, the middle child treatment, right? But it did not happen. So I kept quiet for the rest of my life, and it was particularly difficult during adolescence, because of all this rebellious youth and other stereotypes. My parents and I argued quite a bit during that time, but it's because they generated those same discomforts. I remember one time when I got in trouble at school, and they spent almost an entire afternoon talking to the principal about my behavior, this and that, delving to the core of the problem, which happily was lack of attention at home. Thereupon, my parents, scolding me, apologized as well, and we went home. My treatment that good week went slightly better, which is as far as I can remember. But after the week was over, things went back to normal, and unfortunately for me, my sister was still the center of attention. I was relegated to the background per usual. If I had a little more money, believe me, I would have paid for some psychological therapy sessions. But I didn't. So, like any good person of this century, I bit my tongue and repressed all my feelings until college, where I met John. I'd always had the peculiar of dating big, strong, confident guys, but ultimately they ended up the same way, cheating on me and abandoning me, and any hint of fidelity they could generate in me. Add to that where I come from, and believe me, my head was not in a good place to live. John was different. He was short, skinny, nerdy, and a video game fanatic, and allergic to contact sports. Yeah, I sound cruel, but those were his words. At first, he didn't catch my attention, at all, and I even disliked him a bit, being that I was the one, of those people who would possibly bully him if I could get him on the street. Or not bullying, really, but just ignore him, generating the same conflict I had at home. But that was until I talked to him. He was tender, sympathetic, kind, gentleman. I still remember our, 5 first dates in detail, and it's because I finally felt like I was being treated the way I deserved to be treated, because someone was paying attention to me and making me see that I was enough or even too much for him. He used to say that he would never in his life expect someone like me to end up dating someone like him, because of all the stark differences, right? He was also honest with me and explained about his very difficult condition. He suffers from constant pain, mostly in the back area, and has scoliosis since childhood. This has been a fairly notorious limitation since he was born, and although physically he seems to be fine, he was telling me that at any moment he could require emergency surgery. He's since been rallying in case it does happen, and it was something that I thought was both smart and brave of him. He told me that from job to job he managed to scrape together at the age of 12 almost $2,000 without ever spending on a popsicle or one of those sodas I craved in school. That's why I said this guy has my respect. And, things just happened. However, there was a lot of things involved for which I feel somewhat responsible. You see, when we finished college, which part-time job and a promising future, we decided to take our relationship to the next level. That's why we used some money to be able to go on trips to some cities, so we could enjoy ourselves as a formal couple. This period was quite nice because there were no fights and I could stay away from my parents' roof, so I could receive the attention that I was never given and even denied to me. However, this money I mentioned was part of John's operation money, but he didn't reveal it to me until a few days after our tour was over. Of course, there was some hiccups afterward, mostly from me telling him that he did not have to have done it, as I wasn't worth it, but when he dropped that ring at me and got down on that knee after a normal dinner we had that night, I could not say no to him. How could it be that even when I revealed the engagement to my parents, none of them seemed to pay proper attention? It was something along the lines of, that's nice. Congratulations, what's the dude's name? The guy I've been dating for 5 years. Instead, my sister, who was still in college, was being supported in everything, from student loans to the dorm itself, which my parents were paying for in spades. Even for a career like hotel management, and by the way, not that I'm going to discredit it or anything like that, but it's amazing the change that they have between my career and hers at the time we chose them. Mostly because it was imposed on me when she said that she wanted to travel the world, and that alone was enough to win over both our parents. Anyways, my sister had the upper hand, and she never missed a chance to rub it in our faces. Of course, she doesn't do it like she used to when we were kids. She was very snooty about her things, and I still remember one Christmas when she got the gift she wanted, but I didn't because I was, quote, too old for Santa. Even though she kept getting the same gifts until 2 years after she was my age by then. And she started to celebrate precisely the fact that she did get gifts and I didn't. She would rub my face in it, dance and make fun of them. And my parents? Well, she rubbed them in my face, danced and teased me and my parents as well. Well, they were too busy caroling with my drunken uncles in the kitchen. Yes, they have been my life up until then, but I dare say none of it mattered to me. Not of what I just told you have ever gotten bad enough to say off-color things. In itself, I took it for years as bad behavior on part of my parents, but I devalued my situation by saying that many people have gone through a similar or even worse situation. But now I see that this is not so. And it is then that I tell the details of what makes my story particularly horrible. Years ago, my parents went through a rather delicate economic situation because of all the, sometimes somewhat exaggerated excessive spending by my sister. They ended up almost completely in debt to the neighbor's dog. And that's when John and I came along. I know what they'll say, why help your parents when all they have given you is a life full of neglect? But understand that I have a little chicken heart, and they are my parents. Besides, all their friends, when I talked to them, would just tell me to help them because they felt so bad asking me for money when they were aware of my situation with them. In that sense, I thought at some point they were going to apologize for the years and terrible parenting that they gave me. But you know what? Nothing of that sort. So, I gave them some money and they were able to get themselves completely out of debt. But beyond that, it was a thank you, darling. That felt more like it was my blood obligation to support them and look out for them. That felt very bad to me, but now I feel worse about another situation. As I told you, John spent some of the money from his emergency surgeries on our trip and our wedding. And although we managed to recover some of it, in the end it wasn't enough to make ends meet. I asked my parents to help me because I knew from that ugly experience that they've been saving up. I told them, no, I begged them, that it was for my husband, the person I loved the most, but they made 1,001 excuses until I finally got discouraged and started asking for loans like crazy. The surgery was one of the most expensive things since it was bone marrow transplant, which is only surpassed by emergency lung or heart transplants. You don't know how helpless I was when I woke up one day. John next to me in bed crying, saying he couldn't move, much less get up. I was in panic and despair, and seeing my parents on concerned faces when I would ask for help and they would say, "I'm sorry, honey, we don't have it," or "We're saving up for something else." It was too much for me to take. I wanted to disengage from them and disappear from the planet, and I had to borrow heavily from friends and even campaign on the internet to do it. In the end, we reached the goal and the operation could be done. It was quite a delicate process, but seeing the satisfaction on John's face, the man who only cared about giving me the life I didn't think I deserved, was too much for my heart. My parents and, of course, sister were there during rehab, and while John kept telling me to change my face, the truth is I wasn't the most exciting person in the room when they came here, let alone when I found out what happened. That is the real reason why they couldn't help. As it turns out, there was something more important after all. To buy my sister a damn house. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, and a modest backyard, and of course 2 bathrooms equipped and with the possibility of a basement. Do you know what my wedding present was? A kitchen mixer. And by the way, I already have a better one. I think it was the biggest slap of reality I've ever had in my life, and when I found out a month after John's surgery, he had to hide the phone and car keys from me because I was so angry with them. I would have told my parents anything morally wrong, from wishing them dead to wishing I've never been their daughter, and I even had a huge upset stomach as a result of it. I mean, they don't have money for their son-in-law, but they do have money to give a super fancy house to their youngest daughter. Guys, you'll excuse me, but this goes beyond jealousy. This is almost grounds for a moral lawsuit. I'll speak to you straight and give you round numbers. John's surgery, $140,000. And the house they gave my sister is valued at almost $200,000. A few things could have happened. Either they could have given her an apartment or something noticeably more comfortable, or they could have loaned us the money and then we could have paid them back. They haven't written to me, and neither has my sister. The most surreal part of the whole thing is that they gave that house to the daughter to graduate 2 years after she was supposed to finish her degree. Because my sister was enough of an idiot to repeat 2 whole years at university. And guys, that is not cheap. I'll admit those were the economic problems they faced, my sister's imbecility, and now they reward her with that. It's super unfair. Update number 1. I'm sorry, guys. I got carried away with my previous post, and I don't know, I felt that if I kept writing, I would get to the part where I would start saying obscenities. Although many like it, I have to remain serene because I know I'm not that. Anyways, I got upset too because they didn't have a valid excuse for not helping. Giving my sister a house was perhaps the biggest slap in the face I've ever gotten in life. John remains too calm, although I've slowly tried to bring him to the point where this is me. Of course, he didn't have to go through the same thing I did because he still had more considerate family. He was an only child, but he grew up with several cousins, and he tells me that it wasn't a problem. Everyone treated everyone the same, always with respect and affection in between, and I can only envy him tremendously. Anyways, I've not spoken to my parents since, but I know how I feel, and they know it. My sister keeps bragging about her new house online, even though my husband was on the verge of death just a few weeks ago. It's perhaps a new definition for the word selfish. In itself, it was nothing necessary for her, but now she had a clear path for any drone to approach her like flies to honey. A pretty girl, single, recently graduated, and a tremendous house? By God, what she's going to do is feast on men in her home. For that's another aspect of her, that she's never known how to say no to a man. I could spend a lifetime saying all the things that I detest and that are objectively wrong with my sister, but I feel that words would not be enough. Anyways, I came here to vent and to let you see that no matter how selfish you think your parents are, you will know that someone, somewhere in the world, there's a girl with even worse parents. I think I mentioned it, but it killed me to see John on the surgery table with the mask and the blank stare, and I felt like I was going to say goodbye forever to the person who has loved and supported me in the most in my whole life. So it's very delicate in the state in which it's in, because it is such an immense rage that it makes the desire for hatred well up on me again. Previously, I've commented on how I used to not get angry with them for the simple fact of being my parents, but I think they broke that privilege, because there's times when even your family have to say no to. Those were some bitter conversations I remember having in high school with my guidance counselors, and they would say the typical, "You should love your parents no matter what because they gave you life, and sacrifice part of theirs to give you a comfortable upbringing." And while I never lacked food on the table, okay, maybe that's true, I never lacked it, there are times when even that doesn't matter if the rest of your upbringing is going to be absolutely horrible. Updates number 2. It's bad to laugh at other people's frustrations and misfortunes, but on this occasion I would be surprised not to. As I found out, No. You know what? I'll explain it. My parents texted me and they took advantage of the fact that I was very busy. They knew that I wasn't going to pay 100% attention to them, and from what I gleaned from the conversation, I learned that my parents did not buy the house outright, but offered a down payment to secure the house at about 50%, with my sister proposing to pay part of the loan that they made in a certain amount of time. In other words, it was going to be a joint purchase, but she needed to come up with a 50% of my parents' loan. That made me feel kinda good. I mean, just a little. Not that much, because it made me believe that at least my sister was able to pitch in so she could have her own house, although that doesn't take away from how selfish they were with us at the time. I also understand why, in part, they could not help us, and it's because they didn't have the money. I'm not going to put so many alibis for what they did, because they didn't even engage in explaining their situation to us. They just went full-on pandering to my sister and everything she wanted. But guys, that is not the craziest part of it. I forgot to mention something, but it's been about 3 months since my last update, which was when my sister got the house, and my sister has not paid her share of the home at all. She had a really good job, but ended up spending what she had on a fancy new car just to match her fancy new house. Stupid, I know, but what can you expect from her? I'm not surprised by somehow my parents are, who are just starting to see her for who she is, a spoiled brat who doesn't know how to manage her own life. Anyways, the thing is, they contacted me because it turns out that the lost daughter they always had on the side is living a pretty comfortable life. After all, a certain me and a certain husband in the last few months started a company that took off absolutely exorbitantly from one moment to the next. We invested in one of the foreign clients' orders and we hit the jackpot with it. That and the fact that we decided to bet on some emerging businesses from some friends, and they skyrocketed like you don't have an idea. What's more, we went from trying to find money for operations to paying back loans with interest. And that's another update I was going to share with you. John and I have improved in our lives lately. It's funny about all that because I even got to thinking that it was part of the divine heavenly karma that caused us to have so many ugly moments before we could have our resurgence. Just to give you an idea. With just my part of the salary alone, it was enough to get out of debt. And we were saving to be able to buy a new car, but given the circumstances, we want to take a risk and go for a home. Of course, we'll be keeping the car we have for a long time, but we prefer the house because, depending on the place, it would be even more efficient for transportation. Currently, I'd say the only negative aspect of the routine is to take the bus from time to time as not to put too much strain on the car. But it's all for the sake of saving money. We even set a goal of having our first child as soon as we had 3 things. A house, a car, and of course a trip to Europe. After that, welcome pregnancy baby belly. Gosh, I do get sidetracked from the story. Anyways, my parents called me to ask me for money. That's right, they got to the point where, with their hands well and truly washed, they ended up coming to me so they could help pay for my sister's house. Of course, I did not give them an immediate answer, as I told them I'm busy. And well, I was in the middle of a very important meeting, and I was answering them all the time, yes, yes, no, whatever, no, yes. Then I read the issue, and it dawned upon me. So I was able to secretly laugh at their situation, but no, that's not how things work. It's not like you could have offended me or denied your help in the past and then come to me in the most normal way asking for help. No! Gentlemen, that's not how life works. And if you think there's nothing wrong with that, I recommend you stop reading from now on, because you may not like what's coming. I haven't spoken to my sister at all times, but I know my parents haven't scolded her properly, and that gets on my nerves. If so, her behavior will simply be worse, and it'll be all her fault. Update number 3. I did something wrong. Or good, not bad, but fair, I guess. Depends on the point of view you take, but to tell you a little more, let's go back to a month when my parents had the nerve to ask me to finish paying for my sister's house, after she spent her money on a new car. I refused at their faces flat out, and it was going to be my revenge for everything that they've done to me all my life. But something happened, and the gears of a diabolical plan, I thought, began to turn. First, I had to talk to them again sometime later, calling a small family meeting where I exposed everything, and I mean everything. John wanted to be with me on the occasion, but he was at work, busy with a super important meeting, and I arrived at my sister's house. First time I had seen it from the inside, since all I had seen were pictures online. My parents were there, and they were all half crestfallen because they knew that they had been very hypocritical with me. When I was about to start talking, my sister all at once jumped up and said, Look, we know what you're going to say, that we're terrible people and all that. Can we skip it? I just feel like it's over the top. Well, I have to thank her for saying this, because then I was able to go on to the next part much easier. I start saying that even so, they should understand that it was all wrong and that they would now be paying for the broken dishes, or rather they would not have to, since I took out a piece of paper and put it on the table. Oh, it was nothing, just a small document that said John and I were the owners of the property we were talking about. I had to explain it to them, as they didn't quite understand. When I told them that thanks to the contacts with the seller who sold them the house, I was able to do something. Apparently she was well aware of the situation, and I don't know about how for more than 3 months the house payment was still due, when at least half the down payment had been promised, and when she realized that my sister had a new car and the purchase had not been finalized, she was able to take legal action. Of course, that was before I arrived, coincidentally. The bank put both the house and my sister's car up for auction, since she wasn't able to afford them, something my sister was very well of and did not tell my parents. The seller showed me pictures of the place, and I told her that even though she was my sister, I had not gone to visit her. The truth is that the place was very nice. So, I offered her up 75% of the total payment in advance, with the possibility of paying the rest next month, because that was when, she would trust that the same thing that happened to my other side of the family would not happen again. And I have news for you, today is the end of that month, so officially the house and the car is ours! That's right, you know what they call that? 2 birds, 1 stone. At first, my sister gets very upset and refused to take her things out of there, as she said that this was her new home. But I told her in the most coldest voice in the world that the contract on the table said otherwise, and that she better leave before I take legal action. I never felt better in my life. And here we are, in a new house with a new car, but we're thinking of selling this car and having 2 more family focuses. After all, we're already considering going further with this family project. Regarding my family situation, well, since my sister ended up moving in with my parents and sold her car to get out of various expenses, neither of them seemed to apologize to me for everything. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. And my sister hates my guts for everything that happened. I know, it wasn't right, but you pay for things one way or the other, and I'm just thrilled about our new home. Although we had it deep cleaned very well, because the previous tenants, let's say, were not all that neat. My mom tried to apologize via video call, but then started asking me for money and some consideration, to which I told her the whole situation was earned by them for the kind of people that they were. If they loved my sister so much, then keep supporting her, for surely they can get other loans so they can, get their next house. Meanwhile, John and I are still in our new abode, decorating and able to ride our bikes to work, but we had better not get used to it, as we are soon going to have a new truck that will allow us to get in and out and explore the world much better. Oddly enough, I'm thinking of a cheaper car than the other one my sister had, but much more practical. Well, that's always been me, the one who sees much further ahead. Maybe my family would have understood if they paid more attention to me. Anyways, sorry.
Story 7th.
Hey guys, I'm Michaela, and I'm writing this post about my sister Jada being an absolute dumb clown. So basically, Jada got married to the same guy who bullied me throughout high school, and his name's Paul. I mean, the fact that she's marrying somebody who hurt me my entire adolescence should be enough for me to hate her forever. But no, there's more. After rubbing it in our faces and calling us impoverished and ghetto, yeah, imagine being racist to your own damn family. She developed a superiority complex, but her in-laws brought her down really, really quickly. You see, on the day of her wedding with Paul, his father disowned him for getting married to a black woman without even signing prenuptials. And no, that wasn't the first time they were being racist. They've openly been racist throughout this whole thing, to my sister's face, and she's just been letting it slide. Now, I know for a fact that she's just been putting up with him for his money. I know she doesn't love him or anything. I know she just wanted to chase the bag, clearly, but now that he's gone, he has no money. She's been whining and crying about it. Obviously, none of us are taking it. Before I go into detail about what happened those past few months, let me give you guys a rundown of my relationship with Paul. And of course, to provide context over why I'm so mad at my sister. Even though Paul was 2 years older than me, we were in the same class. This is because he was put in school 2 years late while his family was in their exploration and hippie era, traveling the world. You see, I know this because Paul really likes to brag, just always talking about it well into our teenage years when I knew damn well he probably didn't even remember it. But anyways, imagine having so much money that you just up and leave for 8 months while your siblings run the family business. I mean, that's goals, honestly. So yeah, he was the oldest dude in our class. Initially, in the first few years of primary school, we got along amicably, working together occasionally and childish banter here and there. He was always a snob, mind you, and he always had some sort of god complex. As somebody who grew up with cheap noodles and toast for dinner, I'll admit I was envious of the cupcakes and chicken sandwiches he would bring for lunch,
And I wanted his life so bad when I was a kid.
He would show off all the time, but it was all fine and games, and I still found him tolerable until we were a bit older. Probably because of what, he heard around him at home. He started making jabs at the color of my skin. I'm black, if you haven't figured that out yet, by the way. It started as a harmless joke about how he was glad school was in the daytime, because he would never be able to see me at night, and over my 4C hair. It kept getting worse, and he made being in school tolerable, and it just led to me having a troubled teenage life. I became introverted and oppressed, and my personality, it was just constantly finding reasons to make fun of me if I ever spoke about anything in class. He used to often pull my hair, call me racist names, and he tugged at my braids whenever he passed by, and if I kept them short, he would call me a clown. It started by me straightening my hair, which is why if you ever look at my pictures from back then, you'll see fried, frizzy hair. Anyways, I think the worst part was after we all hit puberty. I grew up in size, and I naturally have wide thighs, as do the rest of the women in my family. I wasn't fat or anything, I just had thick thighs. More thick than a white person. But he just needed a reason to bully me. So, on came the fat shaming and bullying about my body. He would just laugh with his friends about how fat I was. I developed an eating disorder to that, and it took me years to eat normally. I'm not one to bully others or say bad things about them, but he sure as hell was one to speak. He had a lanky build because he was so tall and he had so much acne. The guy barely ever took a shower in high school, so he was smelly as hell. His hair was also disgustingly greasy, and he had this habit of rubbing his skin as a ton of dirt would come off. No girl wanted to talk to him because of his gross habit, and he isn't conventionally attractive either way. His nose is crooked and weird, and his beard doesn't connect. But he won't shave it, so it looks like somebody ripped off his hair from down under and stuck it on his face. So yeah, he had no room to bully others with how he looked. He's ugly, even though he has all the means to be groomed and tidy. I think the worst he's ever done is, in order to kill two birds with one stone, he took the class smart dude's bag full of fat books, who carries a full-size dictionary and digest to high school anyways, and he threw it at my head saying, "Will your stupid crown protect you from this?" I had a headache for days after that, and I didn't have any bruises, but my head hurt like crazy for the next week or so. I don't really know what happened, but I couldn't stop crying, and I had to stay home for most of the time. I even failed an important exam. So yeah, that sucks. And all because he was older and really tall. I mean, he's like 7 feet tall. And back then, also, he was ridiculously gigantic. So everybody was scared of him. It took me a really long time to get over all of it, so when my sister brought him home as her new bae, I kinda went ballistic. So basically, those two met at a bar and he took her back to his place. Well, I should say his parents' place because too useless to live on his own. And as soon as Jada saw his house, she decided that he was the one. I guess my sister has insane game because somehow Paul looked past the color of her skin and was actually kind of okay to her. Well, initially at least. They had been dating for only 3 months, even when Jada got down on one knee and proposed to him. He said yes, and then she brought him to the family get-together and introduced him as the fiancé. As soon as he saw me, I saw recognition flicker in his eye. Later, he caught me alone and said some extremely rude things about my character and got up real close to my space. Thankfully, my husband Jordan noticed. I was in the kitchen too long and came looking for me. He shoved Paul off me and told him to stay the hell away from me or there's going to be severe consequences. Paul, while tall and overbearing, was still lanky enough for my husband to overpower him with a simple shove. He chalked it up to Paul being extremely drunk, but he still took Jada aside and warned her of his behavior. Jada simply shrugged it off and told him they're in love. I probably instigated him, because he'd never showed her any signs of violence. Guys, I later screamed at Jada for getting engaged to somebody who practically tainted all my teenage years and straight up ruined my childhood. Yeah, I even went to warn her that his family was extremely racist and she would have to suffer until she broke and got a divorce from him. She said that she would never get divorced and that I was secretly in love with Paul in my teenage years, and I got extremely jealous and probably flirted with him, which is why he came to me and my character. Let me tell you, my husband had to hold me back or I would have knocked some sense into her stupid brain. Anyways, I let her go on as I knew for sure that karma was going to whoop her well for me, and this wasn't going to end well for anybody. I saw the undertones of racism when we were out dress shopping for Jada's wedding. She would bring Paul's mother and sister with her to help pick the dress. They made fun of her choices and called them tacky and said that this was what they expected from somebody like her.
Ugh, disgusting, honestly.
It got even worse at the bachelorette party, with Paul's sister constantly checking Jada for drugs. It was infuriating, but Jada was being a suck-up and trying to appease her new family, or so she thought. Jada made fun of us quite a lot, actually. Our parents aren't extremely rich, as my mother is a teacher and my father runs a driving school. So they were protesting about the demands that Jada was making. She spent a ridiculous amount on her hair and makeup and nails and salon and everything, and I get wanting the best for your wedding, and I also know how much one spends on their wedding too. See, I was expecting a huge hole in the pocket, but I've gotten married and she was practically blowing through cash, paying way more than we could afford, and I mean it. Going to designers and big names for the exact same thing she could get at a good shop. It's like she was trying to spend just as much as she could. I got sick, really quick, and told her our parents weren't paying for her dress, which was expensive enough for a damn payment on a car. My Aunt Abby decided to help us with the wedding dress because there was too much burden on us for the crap Jada needed at her wedding. But then Paul went and said something rude to her about her weight. Aunt Abby has been going to the gym for the past 6 years. She's just thick, built, and the unkempt hair. Now, my aunt may be kind, but she ain't a pushover. She immediately told Paul that he would pay for the dress and that Jada should not expect her at the wedding. Now, Paul knew that he could not go and tell anyone about this and his disrespect, so he paid for the dress himself. Well, that's a win-win, I thought. So, things really took a turn when days before the wedding, Paul's parents showed up with a prenuptial agreement. For those of you who aren't really familiar, a prenup is a legal document that separates assets and protection of individuals from financial exploitations in case of a divorce. Good choice on their part, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it was offensive, but that's exactly what Jada wanted, right? Money. So when that happened, Jada threw a fit and asked Paul not to go through with it, claiming she was hurt his parents would think that she was in it for the money. She said the prenup was a sign of a lack of trust and showed that they expected a divorce even before the marriage. She said that she would back out of the marriage if that happened. So Paul straight up refused. Paul's parents simply shrugged and told him that he would have to deal with the consequences of that then. Oh, well. Since Paul refused to go through with the prenup, Paul's father decided that he needed to safeguard his assets anyways. So on the day of their wedding, which was actually pretty pleasant apart from the racist jeers from Paul's extended family, Paul's father announced he's disowning his son. He claimed that he could not have someone of a lower status in his family and did not want anything of his to be tainted and mixed with our kind. He also mentioned that Paul would have to look out for himself financially, and all he was getting was his bachelor pad from his college days. After that, everybody cleared out pretty quickly, and I couldn't help but smirk at the way things turned out. Jada has been pretty neutral around Paul, but she's been whining and moaning about how she's going to have to work to provide for the two of them, because her husband is useless and refused to lift a finger. She was hoping that she would live life on easy mode, but everything has gotten 10 times harder. I guess that's karma for you. I just can't wait to enjoy whatever happens next. But whatever does happen, I'll keep you guys updated. Update number 1. Hey guys, it's been a few days and I'm back with an update of how things are going for Jada, since some of you were so curious. Also, before I begin, the victim blaming in the comment section is gross. Be better. I didn't say my shortcomings were Paul's fault. I said he bullied me, and that led to my dysphoria in my own head, leading me to make some unfortunate decisions. But he should not have bullied me, period. Thanks for the support, though, and, to the nicer comments I read, that I should not help Jada from a lot of y'all, and that I should go non-contact. I see why that makes sense, but she's my sister, and I don't feel alright completely ditching her. That being said, it's her life, and I'm not intervening until she asks me to. I visited Paul and Jada at their house, and if you can call it that, it's tiny, but hey, it's at least theirs, and they don't have to pay rent. Poor Jada didn't get to go to a honeymoon. They used that refund from groceries and stuff, and, because both their families refused to help them out in the slightest. Jada is working 2 jobs now, and a lot of her time goes into providing for them both, because Paul is still, quote, figuring out what to do with his life, and has not decided on a career. Jada struggled to find the second job, though, because Paul's family hates her. They have influence around town, so they're ensuring her life is very hard. Paul's family is openly racist. They use slurs for people other than whites. They don't care what, you've done as long as you're white. And I wish that we were exaggerating, I really do. But their family has a huge influence in the area, and 3 guesses for who the majority race is here. My neighborhood is very isolated because of the discrimination. Of course, most people here are normal and don't give a crap, but there are exceptions, and the exceptions are influential. So I wasn't shocked when I heard Paul's mom trash talk my sister and shame her for every choice that she's made. They didn't talk about me badly, as I'm doing well, and I've earned my respect in society. I have a certain social status that I built up around here, so I could protect myself from the harassment I faced as a teenager. And it helps to be a lawyer, married to a lawyer from a legacy family. Nobody can refute that I am where I am because of my own hard work. And that's all I ever wanted. You can't say the same for my sister, who's still living off my parents and barely has a career. She's smart, yeah, just too lazy to make something of it. She wants the fast, easy road, and that's why she married Paul. Obviously, it didn't work out for her, but that's on her not heeding our warning. I'm actually surprised she didn't do something stupid like baby trap him. But they've barely been together for a year, so there's really no telling how she'll just stoop. So when I went to visit them, Paul was playing video games and Jada was overwhelmed. I helped her with the cleaning. Yes, Paul made a racist remark about that and how it should have been my career, and then she vented a whole lot to me. I didn't exactly want to rub it in her face, so I just warned her not to have kids and be extremely careful as to avoid pregnancy. I told her to wait it out and please be careful. So yeah, she's struggling right now, and I don't think the marriage will last, but we'll see. I just kind of feel bad for her since she's my sister. So, should I actually help her out or not? Update number 2. 3 months later. I thought that I would be satisfied by the karma that hit my sister, but I'm not. This is actually really painful for me, and I can't see my sister going through so much. She really had the potential to do something great with her life, but she married an imbecile, looking for the easy way out, and things got a gazillion times harder. Well, let me just say, things took a turn towards the dark, and a lot of you predicted right. Jada came to our parents seeking monetary help a month or 2 ago. My parents said no and slammed the door in their face. They've really hurt her by everything she said before the wedding, so I don't blame them for not wanting anything to do with her. My parents didn't even chew her out or say anything, they just said no and shut the door in her face. Honestly, iconic. My sister deserved it from them, but I could not tolerate her being stretched so thin. It was too much for me to bear, so I went to her house to help with the finances. When I got there, Paul was very inebriated. She explained to me that Paul, with all his free time and lack of responsibility, had turned to alcohol. As we all know, alcohol's pretty expensive when you barely have money, and since almost all of her pay for one of her jobs was going to his alcohol, she was struggling to keep the lights on. When I asked her why she couldn't simply refuse to give Paul her money for booze, she refused to meet my eye. When I tell you my heart sunk into the earth, I was near tears at my sister's poor condition. I saw red at that point, and I'm not really a victim blamer, but I chewed my sister out real good. I told her that she received constant warnings from our entire family, and that literally anyone could sense from a mile away that she was the fate of their relationship. I called her greedy and foolish and told her that if things got worse, it would be on her for not seeing the red flags, even when we begged her to see it. I gave her some cash, and then I decided to unleash the full extent of my wrath onto Paul. I screamed at Paul to get his life together and get a job. I told him that if he did not stop drinking, I would cut all his expenses off and make sure he didn't get a single penny to fund his boozing habit. I yelled at him for an hour straight, and his eyes were literally glazed over by the end of it. So I grabbed his shoulders and shook him, threatening to ruin his life. Then he pushed me off him and told me that he could destroy me with a quarter of his strength. He hurled something extremely offensive, slurs at me, and told me he would beat me into a pulp and bury me in the sand. I was shocked at his appalling words, to say the least. And then something even more shocking happened. My sister agreed with him. She told me to leave. She told me she would call the cops on me if I didn't get out. I asked whether she knew this meant I would never look back at her again, and she nodded in the affirmation, pushing me out the door aggressively, so I decided that I would not help her anymore. The fact that she turned on me was truly my final straw, so I'm now talking to her, no, never again. It's been 2 weeks since that happened, and I remembered a lot of you were asking for an update, so I decided to post what was going on with all this. Anyways, hopefully things get better for her, but I'm not looking back. Update number 3. Oh my gosh. Guys, it's been a few days since my last update, and I'm back with some sickening information. Paul physically hurt Jada after a whole lot of booze. Finally, Jada decided enough is enough, so she left to go to Aunt Abby's house to live, but Aunt Abby didn't let her in. She told her to leave and that she had no room in her house for a traitor to our community, and reminded her of the whole wedding dress thing. After the wedding dress debacle, Aunt Abby had taken Jada aside for a talk. Aunt Abby told Jada that Paul was extremely rude, and he made those comments to her aunt he could make worse to her. She said that this seemed like pre-stages of abuse and warned Jada to be careful and leave, while it was still easy. She warned her at the time and she didn't listen. So Aunt Abby gave her some money, some advice, and resources for divorce and told her to get off the doorstep. So Jada finally ended up at my door. Now, I was extremely mad at her for everything that happened when I went to her home, but I wasn't at all okay with completely ditching her either. So I took her in. But I put forth a complete couple of conditions. I told her that I would not be interacting with her at all, and that she would have to pay rent. I've been treating her like a complete stranger ever since, and she cooks her own meals and everything. I don't even want anything to do with her, and she's just a guest. I did, however, find out that Jada finally sent divorce papers to that idiot. That wasn't the end, though. Paul had to be the entitled brat he is again. See, Paul is an alcoholic. He hasn't worked a day in his life, so when Jada left him on his own, he took a turn for the worst and did not have much money to support himself. So, his stash ran dry pretty quick. Jada had stopped supporting his lifestyle after walking out, so that slimy, grimy pig obviously crawled back to his parents. But now his parents are claiming that Jada abused and tortured their son. Her violence and misbehavior caused Paul to turn to an alcohol as coping mechanisms, apparently. Hilarious, am I right? Like my tiny sister could cause any damage to that 7-foot hunk, with all the influence on the planet. Paul's gone so far as to claim that Jada used physical force and forced him to drink alcohol by pressing the bottle to his lips. So yeah, the legal battle isn't going to be easy because they both have claims of violence against each other. I'm not helping with any manner, and I'm gonna stay out of it. Well, at least they're now away from each other, and in the end, well, it's the best situation. Final update. Wow, I forgot this post even existed. It's been more than a year, and I got a message asking for an update and the aftermath. I told you my sister is incredibly smart, right? She just used her brain for the wrong reason, so basically, my sister had recordings of Paul physically abusing her and took pictures of her marks. She collected receipts of Paul's alcohol purchases and kept the timestamps, placing her at work when the alleged abuse happened. She recorded their conversation where she got, him to admit that he's got a drinking problem. and his false promises to fix his mistakes. She emailed all this evidence to his parents and threatened to come forward with it. Of course, all this family cared about was their reputation, so they gave my sister a huge settlement, getting her to drop charges. They also dropped the charges and gave a very public apology to my sister for the false accusations. She dropped the charges, but hey, nobody stopped her from releasing the evidence anyways. She posted it, all the recordings and receipts and every spot of evidence that she had against Paul on her Instagram. I mean, of course, they were taken down almost instantly, but by the time Instagram flagged the content as inappropriate, screenshots were already taken. Duplicates have been posted to the interwebs and everybody in town had seen it. So that was pretty cool. You know, getting the bag and ruining his life. As he was already disowned, his parents feigned ignorance over the whole situation and publicly denounced Paul. Paul moved away to someplace none of us know about, but I heard that he's currently in jail for assault. And he has an 18-year-old girlfriend on the outside who has a son with him. Now, hey, I'm not saying it's true, but I did hear it from his aunt. So I guess that is a pretty reliable resource if you ask me. Well, as for Jada, she moved out of the house immediately after receiving the settlement and bought herself a nice apartment and in a pretty nice spot. She'd finished nursing school before her marriage, and now that there wasn't any burdens on her, she joined the hospital field as a nurse. She did latch on to another rich old white guy, though, but when they moved in together, she found out he wasn't as rich as she thought, but he was pretending and actually used Jada's money. Now she's struggling financially yet again, after deciding to be dependent on someone else. So she just went through all of that just to be miserable again? I'm not sorry for her. She made the same mistake twice, and I'm definitely not helping her out.